Chapter 9:16. Leaving the maze, Jianchen slowly made his way to the center of the hall, as he stared at the formation fixedly. The circular formation on the ground had a diameter of 20 meters, and was in the shape of a pentagram. Countless tiny red lines connected with one another on it, linking up in an extremely complicated and profound manner. Jianchen stared at the formation, as a sliver of thought appeared on his face. He could remember clearly that when he had first come to the hall, the complicated formation was not present. Is this hall perhaps not the one we had originally arrived in, but a different one that seems completely the same? Jianchen involuntarily guessed inside, but he dismissed this thought very quickly. He was certain that this was the same hall he had initially arrived in. There's a formation here. Another Saint Ruler said in surprise as he too discovered the formation. All the other Saint Rulers in the hall were drawn over and gathered in the center. They all stared fixedly at the formation as they stood in thought. The formation is covered by many of those red lines. Is this perhaps the map to the maze? Said a person as he hypothesized. That's impossible. These red lines form a completely different image to the maze, so it can't be a map. Someone else dismissed this immediately. The formation wasn't present before. It has only appeared suddenly right now. Perhaps it has something to do with the way out of the maze? Another person expressed his thoughts. Everyone became silent. Many of them had thought up to there, but they did not have any way to test it. At this very moment, a loud beast roar reverberated from a tunnel. A vicious beast had just been slaughtered by some Saint Ruler, howling out miserably one last time before its death. Jianchen's eyes lit up. His presence had engulfed the entirety of the formation, so he would be able to sense any changes the formation underwent. Just as the beast had died, he discovered that an additional red line had appeared. Does the appearance of this formation have something to do with those beasts? An idea flashed through Jianchen's head. When we first entered the Divine Hall, there wasn't a formation on the ground. Afterward, we encountered the attacks from a large horde of beasts. After we killed off all of them, their corpses littered the ground, and this prevented us from seeing the ground properly. Now that we've returned, the corpses have disappeared, and there's now a formation on the floor. Has this formation appeared because of those beasts? Jianchen's eyes shone as he quickly analyzed the facts. Suddenly, Jianchen's expression changed and he said gruffly, I know now. This formation should be crucial to how we leave the maze, but it's just been hidden for some reason. We need to use the blood of the beasts to make it appear. For every death, a part of the formation will appear. Once enough beasts have been killed, its entirety will appear. We'll be able to leave the maze then. All the people present became stunned when they heard this, before all staring fixedly at the formation on the ground. They all pondered as they stared at it. What evidence do you have to prove what you just said? A burly middle-aged man asked Jianchen. Pay close attention to the formation. If I am right, additional red lines will appear when beasts die. These red lines should be a component of the formation, and only when they all appear will the formation be complete, said Jianchen. Afterward, no one spoke. They all focused their gazes onto the formation, staring at it fixedly for any changes. More Saint Ruler entered the hall as they focused on the formation, leading to an increase in the number of people. They immediately noticed the ring of people around the formation as soon as they arrived, and they also joined in out of curiosity, all staring at the formation with doubt. At this moment, another miserable beast howl rang out. Another vicious beast had been killed in the maze. Just as the beast died, an old man called out from the crowd of people, Look, another red line has actually appeared. I saw it too. It's just as he said. Those beasts really are crucial for us to leave here. We need to add to the formation through their blood. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go kill those beasts and complete the formation as soon as possible. All the people called out in surprise, and some of them immediately charged into the tunnels, impatiently in search of beasts to kill. Jianchen's group did not hesitate either. They casually chose a tunnel and left through it, taking part in the hunt for the beasts. Jianchen needed the monster cores within the beasts' bodies very much, and any one of them would be a priceless treasure on the Tianyuan continent. He needed to collect as much as he could in this rare opportunity. The beasts in the Divine Hall were all reared up by the Octoterra Emperor years ago. After so many years of breeding, no one knew exactly how many there were, nor did anyone know how powerful the strongest one was. Jian Chen's group rampaged in the tunnels, purposefully searching for beasts to hunt. Along the way, they would come across other saint rulers from time to time. However, when they noticed that it was Jian Chen, ruler of the Turtle Clan, they would reveal deep fear. They would greet Jian Chen enthusiastically before taking a path and leaving. No one dared to offend Jian Chen. After all, they had all witnessed Jian Chen's strength when he killed the 5th Heavenly Layer Class 8 vicious beast earlier. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, Jian Chen constantly shuttled back and forth within the maze, hunting down beasts. In these days of slaughter, countless beasts had been felled by Jian Chen's hands. He collected a great pile of monster cores as a result. Rumble! Just as Jian Chen killed off the beast he was dealing with, the entire maze suddenly began to shake violently. In the hall, the complete formation had finally appeared, shining with a dazzling red light that filled the entire hall. In that very moment, the hall had been filled with an extremely powerful energy. In the next moment, the surrounding walls of the maze slowly began to sink, quickly disappearing into the ground completely. As they disappeared, it revealed the many experts in the maze. The maze has disappeared. That formation really was the way out of the maze. The experts all cried out happily as they watched the surroundings. Jian Chen removed the monster core from the beast's head, and then looked around. He discovered that he was now actually in a large square. It was extremely large with an area of several hundred square kilometers. The maze was constructed in this square. The Divine Hall sure is different on the inside compared with the outside. The inside is actually so big. Just the square completely exceeds the size of the hall we saw outside. Newbies sighed emotionally after looking around. The hall where we originally appeared in should be the main entrance of the Divine Hall, while this square should be the first portion of the Divine Hall. Let's continue onward, said Jian Chen, before heading toward the depths. At the same time, all the other saint rulers set out as well. They maintained a certain distance between one another as they slowly made their way into the depths, each filled with caution. In there, not only did they need to stay vigilant of the people around them, they also needed to watch out for dangers from the Divine Hall itself. At this very moment, Jian Chen's eyes froze. He suddenly turned to one side and saw that 100 meters away, the space had begun to tremble violently. It had enveloped 5 saint rulers that traveled together, sucking them away. Everyone be careful, there are formations here. People immediately cried out from the surroundings. Everyone's vigilance rose once again. Everyone continued their way toward the interior of the Divine Hall cautiously, without paying any more attention to whether the trapped people had survived or not. It was extremely difficult to detect the hidden formations. For the next period of time, the formations are hidden everywhere all appeared, trapping the saint rulers that had triggered them. Even Jian Chen's group ended up triggering 3 powerful killing formations, but they managed to break through it successfully with the 7 of them. They passed through the initial area of the Divine Hall, reaching the central region. Many grand halls and pavilions stood in the central region of the hall, and there were many perfectly preserved gardens and ponds. Flowers bloomed in the garden, giving off a heavy fragrance. Many unknown insects moved among the plants, while quite a few fishes swam about in the ponds. The fragrance of the water lingered in the entire region. Under the influence of the Divine Hall, all the organisms, regardless of the various insects or the fishes, had evolved beyond what they seemed. They all possessed extremely powerful offensive abilities. They had existed for countless years, and some of them even radiated with auras akin to saint rulers. The energy they used was extremely odd, similar to the energy of the Divine Hall, which was extremely powerful. Everyone knew the strength of these organisms, so they maintained a wide distance from them. No one dared to provoke them as they continued forward. The central region of the hall was like a city crisscrossed with paths. Everyone gradually scattered after arriving here, spreading out in all directions. Boom! Suddenly, a violent sound rumbled in the distance. A saint ruler had attempted to enter a hall. Just as he opened the door, he was knocked into the air by a violent ripple of energy that had surged out from within. Blood sprayed from his mouth without restraint. However, the door did not close up and remained open. "Let's go in and have a look." A voice rang out and 3 saint rulers immediately entered the hall cautiously. At the same time, blue armor materialized on them, completely condensed from energy. Noticing the armor on them, an undetectable gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. He had fought Saint Kings many times, which was why he could identify that the 3 suits of armor all radiated with a vast presence unique to Saint Kings. That's not their power. There's a Saint King's power within them, and they used that to condense the armor to protect themselves. Jian Chen reached an understanding very quickly. The Saint King's power clearly would only be used when they faced true danger. Right now, they were entering an unknown hall. The dangers would definitely be much greater than that of the vicious beasts, which was why they had used the power without any hesitation. Many people outside paid attention to the movements of the 3 people. Their eyes all flickered with a certain light, hesitating about whether to venture into a hall and see what was inside. Boom! At this moment, a violent rumble resounded from within the hall. A powerful energy immediately rippled from the hall, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Chapter 917. The Octoterra Emperor schemes. At this moment, a violent rumble resounded from within the hall. A powerful energy immediately rippled from the hall, causing the surrounding space to tremble. The hearts of everyone outside sank. They were already expecting that the people who had entered were doomed. The halls really did hide great danger. It was not as peaceful as it seemed. The hall boomed a few times before quickly returning to peace. Afterward, there was no more activity at all. No one could see what had happened inside, due to the Saint Emperor's power in the hall. Even Jian Chen's presence could not pass through the walls. Looks like they've fallen here. Similar thoughts flashed through the heads of many people. Afterward, their dread for that hall became denser and denser, and they swore to never enter it. However, a series of footsteps rang out soon afterward. The 3 people who had entered had actually walked out alive, and each and every one of them was filled with joy. Clearly they had found some great things. Currently their armors had dulled. It had assisted them in resisting those violent attacks, now greatly consumed of power. Their appearance immediately drew everyone's attention. They all stared at the 3 people in shock and doubt, as they revealed expressions of disbelief. They're actually still alive. Just what was there inside? Many people asked immediately, but they did not get any response. As soon as the 3 people came out from a hall, they immediately hurried toward another one without any hesitation. There must be some good stuff in these halls. We need to go find them. We can't let others take it before us, someone said loudly. Afterward, the people all charged toward the surrounding halls in groups without any more worry. Let's go have a look as well. Jian Chen waved his arm and led the people behind him to a nearby hall. Violent booms reverberated from everywhere. A few saint rulers in the surroundings had already opened the doors to halls, as they wore armor condensed from a Saint King's power. There were also quite a few people who were knocked far away by the powerful energy that had erupted from the halls. Jian Chen witnessed everything that was happening in the surroundings. He realized that of all the experts that had entered the Octoterra Divine Hall this time, probably everyone had some of a Saint King's power other than newbies, Xia Wang and him. The Saint Kings had deposited some of their power in them to increase their ability to survive, as once they brought back treasures, the ones that benefited would be the clan supporting them. Looks like there's also Saint King's power in MOG and the others. I just wonder how great the power is, and what level of cultivation the Saint King possessed when they deposited their power into them. Jian Chen glanced at the 4 people behind him from the corner of his eye, and secretly raised his awareness. The 7 of them stopped before a hall, and stood in silence for a while. Xia Wang spoke from one side. As soon as the door is open, there'll be a very powerful attack. It can injure any one of us, so we might as well open it together. Sure, then let's open it together, an old man said steadily. He was Gouda, one of the 4 people that had joined Jian Chen's group. Soon enough, the 7 of them opened the door together. Just as it opened, a powerful ripple of energy immediately shot toward them. They struck out in unison, using their powerful attacks to collide with the ripple of energy. With a rumble, all 7 of them were knocked backward by the energy. They all took a dozen or so steps before stabilizing themselves, but were all unharmed. They entered the hall. The hall was beautifully decorated, and although it had already been countless years since it was last opened, it was extremely clean inside and without dust. Jianchen glanced around, locking onto the table in the room very quickly. There was a space ring, a letter, a thin book, and a stone square board around 30 centimeters in length and width on the table. The 7 of them subconsciously walked toward the room. Abruptly, the space around them began to ripple violently, and their surroundings disappeared in that very instant. It turned into a scorching sea of fire that radiated with terrifying heat. "It's so hot. This is a formation. We've fallen into another formation," growled Xiaowang. A powerful force immediately exuded from his body, forming a barrier around him to protect him from the heat. Jianchen stared at the flames calmly. He felt the terrifying heat and said normally, "This formation is much more powerful than anyone that we've encountered before. If I've guessed correctly, this formation should be prepared for 15th-star experts. I dislike the heat here very much. Ruler, let's work together and break through immediately," Moji said impatiently with a frown. To the sea race that lived in the ocean, fire was their weakness. There was no member of the sea race that liked fire. Jianchen wielded his king armament and leaped up high into the sky. He slashed violently at the space above as his sword radiated with a devastating aura. This attack was equivalent to a casual strike from a Saint King. It completely exceeded the strength of a 9th heavenly layer Saint Ruler, and immediately caused the formation space to tremble violently as the sword cut through the air, before shattering loudly. The sea of fire disappeared, and the surroundings returned to how it was previously. Jianchen's single attack had broken through it. When the 4 people who had tagged along witnessed this, they immediately became overwhelmed with shock. What they knew was that the Turtle Clan was a clan with powerful defense and weak attacks. However, the ruler of the Turtle Clan before them right now had displayed a strength that completely dispelled what was said in the legends. The ruler's strength really has broadened our horizons. It is incredible for the ruler to be able to break through a formation targeted at 15th-star experts with a single attack. Someone said a few words of praise with a dazzling smile. Jianchen remained as usual and said, "This formation may be targeted toward 15th-star experts, but it's no longer as strong as it was before after so much time has passed. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have been able to break through it so easily. Let's go see exactly what treasures are hiding in this hall." With that, Jianchen entered the room with his king armament in hand. He glanced past the items on the table, before locking onto the stone board. Jianchen extended his hand toward the stone board. His hand sank when he held it. The board did not have a weight that matched its size. It was at least several hundred kilograms in weight. Lifting it would be an extremely arduous task for those with weaker strength. Jianchen lifted up the stone board without any difficulty and examined it. There were a few engravings on it, but it seemed incomplete. It was impossible to determine what it was. However, Jianchen could feel a pressure from it that seemed to originate from the world. The pressure was filled with surging battle intent. Jianchen sensed the pressure carefully. For some reason, he felt familiar with the pressure as if he had felt it somewhere before. Suddenly, an idea flashed through Jianchen's head. He growled, "This is a fragment of a Tian-level saint technique." Saint techniques were how the people of the Sea Realm referred to battle skills, where they split them into the 4 levels of Tian, Di, Xian and Huang. Tian-level saint techniques were saint-tier battle skills on the Tian-Yuan continent. All the other people stared at the stone board in Jianchen's hand with burning interest when they heard that. However, they became disappointed soon after. Xiaowang sighed and said, "It's a pity that it's incomplete. It's useless." Even when complete Tian-level saint techniques are extremely difficult to comprehend. There are even many 16th-star experts who have failed to grasp one. That's even more impossible with the one incomplete right now. If we don't collect all the pieces, this fragment will remain useless, Emoji said with a sigh as well. Jianchen lowered his head in thought. He could still remember clearly that when he had assisted the Jessen Kingdom in repelling the 4-kingdom coalition all those years ago, he had once cleared out a kingdom's treasury. In there, he had surprisingly found a fragment of a saint-tier battle skill. However, that fragment clearly did not match up with the one that they had just found, as the two were different battle skills. Afterward, Jianchen examined the three other items. The space ring was filled with large quantities of grand quality crystal coins, reaching into the tens of millions. There were also several monster cores besides the coins, ranging from Class 5 to Class 7. There was even a Class 8 monster core. An incomplete cultivation method was recorded inside the thin book. It was only a small part of it. The letter contained the Octoterra Emperor's comprehension of his cultivation, as well as some matters regarding the latter part of his life. It too was incomplete. Other than the space ring, the other three objects are all incomplete. They're basically trash. This Octoterra Emperor sure likes to mess with people. Newbies could not help but curse. Jianchen paid no attention to Newbie's grumbling and looked toward the others. He asked, "How do you want to split these items? Does anyone have any good suggestions?" Mog and the three others glanced at each other when they heard that. One of them then spoke a suggestion. "The ruler's strength is extraordinary and will be more capable of protecting these items. As a result, I would recommend placing the objects in the ruler's possession for now. We can discuss how we split it in detail after we've left the hall." "I agree with this suggestion." Everyone else agreed to this suggestion, and Jianchen accepted it as well. He put everything away into a separate space ring. They checked through the hall once again. They had virtually flipped the entire hall upside down, but they found nothing else. They then left the area. They entered another hall that had not been entered yet. As soon as they got out, breaking through a formation, they successfully obtained what was stored inside. However, the things inside were all exactly the same. There was a space ring that contained a small fortune, an incomplete letter, an incomplete cultivation method, and a small fragment of the Saint Tier battle skill. Afterward, they entered a third hall. They obtained the exact same objects as before. It seemed like everything in each hall was the same. Looks like the Octoterra Emperor has divided the items into countless pieces and placed them in each hall. You would need to obtain all the other pieces to get the whole item. The Octoterra Emperor actually wants us to kill each other. Jianchen's face sank as he reached an understanding of the Octoterra Emperor's intentions very quickly. Of the items the Octoterra Emperor had left behind, everything could make people drool regardless if it was the incomplete Saint Tier battle skill, his comprehensions, his understandings regarding cultivation, or his cultivation method. Even 16th star experts would find it to be an irresistible enticement. Jianchen could already expect that there would be a brutal massacre between the 160 experts that had entered the Divine Hall. Chapter 9:18. A Barrier's Obstruction 1. We've entered a total of 4 halls and all the items in them are exactly the same. I'm pretty sure that the other halls will have the same items. Looks like only by gathering items from all the halls will you get the complete Tion level Saint technique, cultivation method, and comprehension of cultivation from the Octoterra Emperor. Newbies murmured as he too had thought of this. His eyes flickered a few times, vaguely revealing a vicious light. Clearly, he had already thought about what he needed to do. A gleam of light flashed across Mog's eyes when he saw Jianchen and Newbie's expressions. "Ruler, we might as well just gather all the other parts. They're all invaluable treasures. The Tion level Saint technique in particular. Other than the 3 halls, no one else in the vast sea realm has possession of any. If the ruler is able to return to the Turtle clan with the complete technique, it will definitely cause the clan's strength to skyrocket." Mog was hit with Xia Wang's retort as soon as he finished speaking. "Are you crazy? We only have 7 people including you and me. Do you want us to fight with over 114 star experts that are no weaker than us? Plus, since they're able to enter this place, they're definitely all people of talent. Every single person will possess extremely strong strength in battle. And who knows, they might be hiding powerful trump cards. You never know, someone might have grasped a Tion level Saint technique. They'll be very difficult to handle." Mog stared straight at Xia Wang and said confidently, "It's not like you haven't seen the ruler's strength. Do you really believe they're the ruler's opponent? It's a piece of cake if the ruler wants to kill them. So what if they know Tion level Saint techniques? They won't have the time to cast it at all." Jianchen, What do you think? Newbies looked toward Jianchen in thought, clearly wanting to listen to his decision. Jianchen shook his head. Let's not worry over this for now. We're still in the central region of the Divine Hall, so there's still a long way to go. Also, I believe that the objects toward the end will be even more valuable. We don't need to fall out with everyone over these small things and fight each other to the death. All right, let's stop this here and let's go. With that, Jianchen directly exited the hall. No one had realized that an undetectable sliver of disappointment had appeared in Emoji's eyes. At this moment, almost all the other halls had been emptied out by others. All the doors were wide open, while whatever that was inside had been taken away. Many saint rulers stood around cautiously with their groups in the surroundings, each and every one of them filled with vigilance. They clearly had discovered the secret of the halls as well. Everyone, may I ask if the items you've obtained from each hall are the exact same? That they are a fragment of a Tian-level saint technique, the Octoterra Emperor's comprehension and cultivation, the Octoterra Emperor's cultivation method, and a space ring? At this very moment a heavy voice rang out. It echoed through the entire region, and everyone heard it clearly. The speaker was a burly middle-aged man. He was bare-chested, revealing his powerful muscles, and he wore shorts underneath. His attire was extremely simple, but he radiated with a wild presence. He seemed like a brutal feral beast. The surroundings fell into a silence. The people who recognized this man revealed expressions of fear. The man was a renowned expert of the Heaven Spirit Hall. His name was Thisnik, a genius of a large clan as well as a ruler of that clan. In just 1,000 years of cultivation, he had reached the peak of the 14th star, and had even grasped a Tian-level saint technique that he could cast proficiently. He was extremely powerful. Very few people dared to provoke him. There was even a rumor in the Sea Realm that Thisnik had recently been practicing a wondrous ruler technique that delayed his cultivation. Otherwise, he probably would have reached the 15th star long ago. Any ruler possessed talent that was no weaker than beasts of antiquity. They were destined to become as powerful as hall elders in the future, or even emperors. They could not be underestimated. Thisnik slowly scanned the surrounding people with a sharp glare, causing many of them to hide their expressions. He laughed and said, "Everyone, I guess many of you understand that this is a scheme of the Octoterra Emperor. He has split the item into many pieces and placed them in different halls for us to obtain, with intentions of making us kill each other." Thisnik paused, then continued. "Correct. I need to say that the Tian-level battle skill, the Octoterra Emperor's cultivation method, and his knowledge and experiences of cultivation are treasures you can't just go looking for. But don't forget that we've only reached the center of the hall. I believe there will be even more precious treasures toward the depths, so there's no need for us to fight to the death over these objects before us, and give up on the other treasure in the depths as a result." As soon as the people heard his words, many of them had a change of heart. They immediately understood, and the hostile aura from everyone decreased slightly. "Looks like we're not going to end up fighting," Newbie said from behind Jianchen, with a slightly disappointed tone. He seemed to only be eager for everyone to start fighting. "Let's go," murmured Jianchen. They passed through the many halls and walked toward the depths. He did not worry at all over the Saint-tier battle skill fragments, pieces of cultivation method, or the Octoterra Emperor's experience in cultivation. Currently, everyone was in the sealed Divine Hall. As long as no one could find the way to get out, no one could leave. He would have his chance to collect all the pieces and fragments later on. Jianchen's group was the first to leave. They made their way unhurriedly down the wide path among the halls, immediately drawing the attention of many people in the surroundings. Everyone present was still wavering in a mental stalemate, so anyone who dared to leave confidently at this moment was naturally very attention-catching. "It's that terrifying turtle ruler." All the people revealed a silver of extreme fear when they recognized that the person at the very front was Jianchen. Before, when they hunted the vicious beasts, Jianchen had repelled 7 experts in one stroke, and had even heavily injured them. This shocked everyone. From that moment onward, everyone's gaze toward Jianchen underwent an overwhelming change. Who was it that said that members of the Turtle Clan had better defense and weak attacks? The appearance of this turtle clan ruler had completely overthrown their prior knowledge of the clan. Thisnik stared deeply at Jian Chen's back, as a sliver of hostility appeared in the depths of his eyes. He thought, "Ruler of the turtle clan, you will become a powerful opponent of mine. We will end up fighting sooner or later. I just wonder if you're stronger, or am I on another level?" There was only one legacy of the Octaterra Emperor. It was destined to only be obtained by a single person of the 160. The Divine Hall definitely would be dyed with the blood of saint rulers for this legacy. There were many other famed experts besides Thisnik among the people who had entered the hall. Although they were not as well known as Thisnik, they possessed many hidden trump cards, none of which would be easily dealt with. Virtually all of them had come for the legacy, so if they wanted to obtain it, they needed to eliminate the strongest competitors first. Undoubtedly, Jian Chen and Thisnik were the top competitors to them. Unknowingly, the outstanding Jian Chen and the renowned Thisnik had already become the thorns in many people's backsides. They were two great targets that needed to be eliminated. The other experts all left with various thoughts and feelings after Jian Chen's departure. They all made way for the depths of the Octaterra Divine Hall. There were various formations hidden in the Divine Hall, but none of them were more powerful than the ones on Dragon Island. With the corrosion of time, none of them were as powerful as they had once been before. Jian Chen's group blazed through the obstacles, breaking through many formations and barriers. They finally arrived at the very depths of the Divine Hall. A huge hall stood in the very depths of the Divine Hall. It had a total of 9 floors, while each floor was over 30 meters tall. Jian Chen's group arrived before it, lifting their heads from the front entrance to gaze at how grand it was. Suddenly they all experienced a false impression. Weirdly enough, they felt as if the hall was a world. It represented a sky, resonating with the earth from afar. It was filled with a vast presence. More and more people gathered outside the hall. The other experts had come as well, and many were in a horrible shape, clearly quite tormented by the formations. There was barely anyone who remained uninjured. However, no one had lost their lives. Along the way, they had obtained a pitiful amount of things. Other than some monster cores they had obtained from killing the vicious beasts earlier, everything they found in the halls was incomplete and useless. This hall should be the core of the Divine Hall. This definitely would be the place that the Octaterra Emperor once lived, so there would be quite some treasures inside. There are definitely quite a few treasures the Octaterra Emperor has left behind, but we've only seen a bare minimum along the way. I think the treasures must all be in the hall. The Octaterra Emperor's legacy must be inside. It must be much more dangerous inside as well. Everyone participated in gossip, all staring at the hall with gazes of burning greed. Once they obtained the legacy of the Octaterra Emperor, they would be destined to become an emperor. This was something irresistible to all of them. Although everyone felt extremely impatient, no one moved. Everyone wanted to inherit the legacy, but no one wanted to be the one leading the way. Unknown danger lurked before them, so it was extremely likely for the person who entered first to die first as well. Jian Chen did not move either. Instead, he stood there and inspected every part of the hall. He expanded his presence to his maximum, but it could only expand to less than 1,000 meters away. It could not pass through the structure, and could only observe slightly more than the naked eye. Chapter 919. A barrier's obstruction. 2. Jian Chen did not move either. Instead, he stood there and inspected every part of the hall. He expanded his presence to his maximum, but it could only expand to less than 1,000 meters away. It could not pass through the structure, and could only observe slightly more than the naked eye. A while later, Jian Chen seemed to discover something. A faint smile formed on his lips, and he walked forward without any hesitation. His movements immediately drew the attention of everyone. They all stared at him fixedly, wanting to use him to test the path ahead. At the same time, they charged up their power, ready to rush in at any moment. Jian Chen walked slowly, approaching the grand hall a step at a time. When he reached 100 meters from the hall, a powerful ripple of energy immediately appeared from below, and a blue barrier quickly rose up. It formed a circular shape, enveloping the hall inside and blocking Jian Chen outside. "There's actually a barrier protecting the hall," cried out people from the crowd. All of them were filled with joy. This was just evidence that the hall definitely stored extraordinary treasures. Jian Chen stabbed at the barrier with his king armament, but it did not even tremble. Its defense was unimaginably powerful. Jian Chen's face sank slightly as his eyes flickered a bit. The innate ability of the winged tiger god flashed across his mind before he cried out. "This barrier is extremely powerful. It can't be broken through by just a single person. Everyone, why don't we work together to break it? We need to break this barrier if we want to enter the hall." "I, Thisnik, agree with the ruler of the Turtle Clan's suggestion. I am willing to chip in a portion of my strength to break the barrier." Thisnik was the first one to speak his thoughts. Afterward, the other people all agreed to participate. They reached an agreement between everyone very quickly. Vast ripples of energy surged from them. In that moment, they all began to move, charging up a powerful strike to break through the barrier together. No one was excluded. With a signal, over 100 experts struck out with powerful blows. Over 100 ripples of powerful energy shot from their hands in unison and collided forcefully with the barrier. With a boom, the violent residual energy formed a terrifying storm as it wreaked havoc in the surroundings. It knocked all them backward, and no one was able to keep a stable footing. The blue barrier around the hall rippled gently, as if a pebble had been tossed into a calm lake. It returned to its previous state very quickly. The attacks from over 100 saint rulers could only have such a tiny effect on the barrier. They all became stern when they saw this. The strength of the barrier had far exceeded anything they had expected, almost to a level where they refused to believe its strength. That Octoterra Emperor's too great of a bastard for leaving behind such a strong barrier. Even 15-star experts would find it very difficult to break through, let alone us. Some people curse it involuntarily. The way out should be in the hall as well. That means if we can't enter it, we can't leave. Does the Octoterra Emperor intend to trap us all here until our deaths? What does the Octoterra Emperor want? Only peak 14th-star experts can enter his divine hall. Yet he's made the barrier so tough. He clearly doesn't want us to enter. Does he really want to trap us here forever? All the people revealed extremely ugly expressions as they cursed furiously. Jian Chen frowned in thought before speaking aloud. "Calm down, everyone. The strength of this barrier exceeds our imaginations, so if we want to break through it, we can't hold back at all. Why don't we try once again, but this time with our full strength, and see if we can break through it or not?" Currently, that was their only hope. Everyone immediately agreed and began moving together. Terrifying ripples of energy began to radiate from each and every person, this time several folds more powerful than before. Everyone was virtually using their strongest attack now, striking out with holding back anything. An extremely frightening stream of energy forcefully struck the barrier. As it was the full-powered attack from over 109th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers, it was so powerful that it could even slay 5th Heavenly Layer Saint Kings. However, the results were the same as before. The barrier only trembled slightly, and had easily resisted the terrifying attack. This time, everyone's faces sunk to a dark hue. The Octoterra Divine Hall was completely closed, so only by entering the hall ahead would there be a chance of leaving. If they could not break through the barrier, they would be stuck there. A forceful light flickered through Thisnik's eyes. He called out, "Let's do it again. I hope no one holds back anything. Those who can use Tian-level saint techniques, use them. And that power in your bodies, use that too. If we can't break through the barrier, none of us will be able to leave." A great aura immediately radiated from Thisnik. Following it closely, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky, through the obstructions of the divine hall, and filling up the entire space. Air stopped flowing while everything fell silent. Time seemed to have stopped. Thisnik had been forced to use his Tian-level saint technique. Many saint rulers present also revealed determined expressions when they saw what Thisnik was doing. They no longer bothered with any hiding, unleashing their greatest trump cards. Immediately, over 20 terrifying pressures descended from the sky. Over 20 Tian-level saint techniques were being cast in unison. The pressure from was enough to make the sky to tremble. Even within the Octoterra Divine Hall, space was greatly affected as it distorted. The other saint rulers all experienced a stifling sensation. The pressure made breathing difficult. Over 20 Tian-level saint techniques were cast in unison. The sea realm had never experienced something so grand. Jianshen's heart shivered. Tian-level saint techniques were extremely difficult to comprehend, to the point that even some saint kings could not use any. He never thought that there would actually be over 20 people out of the 160 that had entered who could use them. This had far exceeded anything he had expected. The saint techniques were charged up very quickly. In that moment, all the other experts did not bother to hold back anymore either. They all used their trump cards, using their Saint King's power, if they had any, and charging up their strongest attacks, if they did not have any Saint King's power. Jianshen did not sit around either. His king armament shone with a dazzling dark light, as destructive energy coiled around the weapon. It radiated with a chilling aura. Attack! As Thisnik yelled out, everyone struck out together. The Tian-level saint techniques, and over 100 strands of Saint King's power, coiled together into a dragon, colliding forcefully against the barrier with devastating strength. Boom! With a deafening sound, the attacks collided with the barrier, causing it to shake violently. However, it stabilized very quickly once again and did not shatter. The attacks from all of them immediately transformed into a violent storm of energy, shooting back and colliding violently with them in the end. All the people were knocked into the air by this rebound of energy. Many became heavily injured as blood spurted from their mouths, dyeing the air red. If it were not for the fact that the barrier had absorbed a large portion of the attacks, probably no one would still be alive. They were all knocked thousands of meters away, before falling onto the ground in a horrible condition. They were all pale-faced, while Jianshen and newbies were not exceptions to this either. Both were injured by the terrifying energy. However, Jianshen was protected by his chaotic body, so he was better off than everyone else. All he suffered were some insignificant scrapes. However, everyone became stunned when they saw how the barrier was completely fine. They all became despaired. Over 20 Tian-level saint techniques and attacks from over 100 experts had failed to break the barrier. The barrier's strength had completely overthrown what they had expected. It just was not something they could break through. Roar! Suddenly, loud beast roars rang out in the surroundings, and the ground soon began to tremble gently. The figures of countless vicious beasts had appeared from all directions, and they all charged at the people with bloodshot eyes. They were innumerable, far more than the horde they had initially encountered. God damn it, these beasts just have to come when we're all injured, don't they? And there are so many. How are we going to deal with them? Perhaps we need to use a similar method to how we escaped the maze to enter the hall. That we need to use the blood of these vicious beasts to complete a formation? There's no time. Everyone focus on healing, or we'll all die in the mouths of these beasts. Everyone immediately began to take their respective medicines and pills, using every moment to heal their wounds and recover their consumed energy. Virtually every person present belonged to a large organization, so the medicines they used were all very renowned through the sea realm and very valuable. Some of them were even on par with radiant spirit pills. Their complexions took a turn for the better as soon as they consumed the medicines. It was unable to allow them to achieve a full recovery in such a short amount of time, but at least it had stabilized and reduced their wounds. The surrounding horde of beasts was packed together densely and extremely numerous. Soon enough, all the saint rulers were surrounded by the tide-like beast horde, while another bloody slaughter erupted once again. All the beasts ranged between Class 5 and Class 7, with some Class 8 beasts sandwiched in between. It pressured everyone greatly, injuring quite a few people in a short time. With no other choice, those people could only use the sparsely remaining Saint King's power to condense another suit of armor, as they took pills and medicines like candy. Jianshen, newbies, and Xiaowang all participated in the slaughter of the beasts with everything they had. They were dyed in blood, making it difficult to tell whether they were person or beast. Newbie's hands were golden, constantly stabbing beast after beast. He would use his poison to suppress the beasts first, and then tear them into pieces. From the tips of his fingers, golden threads would shoot out from time to time, tunneling into the heads of Class 5 and Class 6 magical beasts. It would kill them in one stroke and take their monster cores. The king armament in Jian Chen's hand constantly danced about, enveloping the surroundings with blurs and ending the lives of the beasts mercilessly. All the Class 5 and Class 6 beasts could not even withstand a single blow from his sword, falling from just a single strike. Only Class 7 magical beasts could last for some time, but they too would not be able to avoid death in the end. Thisnik roared out angrily as he constantly bisected beasts with the two blades in his hands. He had already formed a path completely forged from beast corpses behind him. Chapter 920. Hanging by a thread. Thisnik was also covered in blood. Despite his powerful strength, he struggled to remain unscathed when faced with the attacks of so many beasts at the same level of cultivation. His burly body was covered with tooth marks and slashes from the beast's claws, while he had already been dyed red by blood. It was unknown whether this was his own blood or the beast's. Newbie's was also covered in injuries, becoming bloody all over as well. Perhaps only Jian Chen remained unharmed out of all 160 experts. The defense of Jian Chen's chaotic body was so great that ordinary Class 7 vicious beasts were unable to cause him any harm, their sharp claws and teeth unable to pierce his skin. Only the beasts beyond Class 7 could pose some threat to him, but Jian Chen would kill them off as soon as possible whenever he discovered any. Xia Wang, Mog, and the others stuck closely to Jian Chen and Newbie's back. They were relatively weak compared to Jian Chen and Newbie's, so they struggled very much to fend off the attacks from so many beasts. As a result, they too were littered with injuries. Battle cries resounded everywhere, while the violent rumblings from the collision of energy constantly rang out. Violent energy ripples wreaked havoc throughout the entire hall, and the ground was dyed red with blood. There was so much blood that a small pool had basically been formed. Suddenly, the amount of blood on the ground began to decrease rapidly. It sank into the ground quickly, before it all flowed toward the hall and the barrier. No one noticed this. At the same time, an extremely powerful soul rippled through the hall, as if a great, sleeping spirit was slowly awakening. The rippling of the soul was blocked by the barrier, so it did not make it out. None of the experts fighting outside could detect it. 20,000 years. People have finally come in. Kill, kill, kill to your heart's content. Let the blood dye this divine hall red. A hazy voice sounded in the empty hall. It was impossible to tell whether it was male or female, but it was filled with malevolence. No one knew about the weird phenomenon inside the hall. The experts fought with the thousands of beasts for 3 whole days before finally killing off all of them. Countless Class 7 beasts had died in their hands, while even the number of dead Class 8 beasts reached over 20. However, they were all below the 5th heavenly layer. Currently, the ground was littered with beast corpses. Over 100 experts sat on top of the corpses as they breathed heavily, trying to catch their breaths. Their faces were filled with exhaustion. They were covered with terrifying wounds, and were currently in a horrendous shape. The battle was extremely intense. There were many more beasts this time, and they were all much more powerful than the horde they had encountered at the start. They had also struck exactly when they were all heavily injured, taking them by surprise. From that battle, almost everyone had expended all of the Saint King's power stored within them, while barely any medicines and pills were left. Over 40 experts had died in the battle. They had all fallen to the claws of the Class 8 beasts, leaving a little over 100 alive. If it were not for the armors condensed from the Saint King's power among the people alive, they probably would have fallen long ago and be dead by now. Jian Chen was in the best condition out of them all. Although he had been injured by Class 8 magical beasts, he could recover automatically without any medicines, thanks to his chaotic body's powerful regeneration. Currently, he worked at leisure through the mountainous piles of corpses to collect monster cores. Thisnik sat cross-legged on the corpse of a Class 8 magical beast, as he recovered silently. He stared at the busy Jian Chen as he said emotionlessly, "The ruler of the Turtle Clan sure has great defense. I've witnessed it today." Jian Chen raised his head to glance at Thisnik after hearing that but said nothing. He then continued his collection of monster cores. These monster cores seemed to be more important than leaving to Jian Chen. At this moment, Jian Chen seemed to realize something. He froze as he cried out. The blood on the ground has actually all disappeared. When they heard this, all the remaining experts immediately flipped through the corpses, as they ignored their wounds. They uncovered the tough ground after kicking aside a few dead bodies. The ground was extremely dry. Other than a few pieces of vicious beasts, there was no blood at all, not a single trace. Odd. Where'd all the blood from the beasts go? There's no formation on the ground either. Is it different to escaping from the maze? Said someone in confusion. His voice was very weak. Look everyone. There's no blood in the bodies of the beasts either, cried out another person. With that, a few people immediately chopped up a few beast corpses. As expected, they found that all the blood had disappeared, without even a droplet remaining. Jian Chen's expression changed. He immediately thought back to when he was removing the monster cores from the heads of the corpses. He did not realize it then, but thinking carefully now, he actually did not see any blood either. Look, their blood has run dry too, someone else cried out. An old man carried the corpse of a sea race expert, as his face was filled with shock. All of their faces darkened severely. This was so odd that it had exceeded their knowledge. No one knew whether this event was good or bad. If my guess is right, the blood should have all been sucked away by the divine hall, an old man hypothesized after a while. That was the only way to explain everything that had happened. But why does the divine hall have to suck away the blood? A few confused voices rang out. They could not work it out no matter how hard they thought. At this very moment, the ground trembled gently once more. Heavy steps rang out from the distance as several vast presences filled the entire sky. This sudden activity caused the relaxed experts to raise their awareness. When they looked over in the direction that the activity originated from, each and every one of them became pale. 5 beasts, all over 30 meters in height, slowly made their way toward them. Each beast radiated with a terrifying aura, all at the 16th star. They were all of the 5th heavenly layer or greater. This bloody Octotera divine hall. Why are there so many beasts in here? Now we're done for, we're doomed. Every person became despaired. Even at their peak, they would not be able to defeat the 5 16th star beasts, let alone now, when they were all exhausted. They did not even have the power to deal with a single one, much less 5. Jian Chen also became grim. His eyes flickered as he secretly ordered the artifact's spirit to awaken the white tiger within the saint artifact. If the situation took an irrecoverable turn for the worst, he would use the white tiger to pass through the barrier. The white tiger's ability to ignore all formations and barriers was Jian Chen's greatest trump card. Unless he was forced into a situation with no other choices, he definitely did not want to reveal the white tiger before all these people. Jian Chen, what do we do? Those 5 vicious beasts are not magical beasts we can handle. If we stay here, there'll only be death. Why don't we enter the artifact space? Newbie sent a mental message to Jian Chen. His voice was stern. Jian Chen stared fixedly at the 5 beasts as an idea suddenly flashed through his head. He called out, "Everyone, we need to get through the barrier if we want to live. These beasts don't possess any intelligence. If we use them correctly, we can completely rely on their strengths to break through the barrier." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Thisnik turned toward Jian Chen and growled, "Ruler, how much confidence and success do you have? Do you have any other better ways then?" Jian Chen countered with a question. "All right, since we're going to die anyway, let's try it. This is the only way we can live," boldly said a middle-aged man that was covered in blood. He acted like he had reached the end of his life, about to make one last struggle. "All right, ruler of the Turtle Clan, I'll believe you once. I wonder what you would like us to do." Thisnik said. He thought secretly, if he can break the barrier, then that would be for the best. Otherwise, I can only use this power to break through for myself. Jian Chen said with a deep voice, "We need to split up into 2 groups. Those who can use Tian-level saint techniques will form one. They will cast their techniques simultaneously, while the second group will stand before the barrier and attract the beast's attention. We need to get the beasts to attack us with their strongest strikes, before immediately dodging out of the way and attacking the barrier as well. When the attacks from the beasts hit the barrier, the first group will immediately strike it with their Tian-level saint techniques as well. I believe that over 20 Tian-level Saint techniques, along with attacks from 5/16 star beasts, will be enough to break through the barrier. Everyone could not help but secretly nod when they heard Jian Chen's plan, agreeing to it in their hearts. They immediately moved in accordance, and all the people who could use Tian-level Saint techniques gathered together. They took large quantities of medicines that recovered their energy, before beginning to charge up their Tian-level Saint techniques. The remaining people stood in a formation, firing off powerful attacks after each other at the beasts that rapidly drew closer. With the violent booms, the 5 beasts were immediately enveloped by several dozen powerful ripples of energy. Although the attacks struggled to cause them any harm, it deeply aggravated them. The 5 beasts all produced deafening roars, charging toward the people wildly. The distance between the two groups rapidly decreased. However, just when the beasts were about to collide with the people, everyone dodged to the sides as fast as they could at the same time. Boom! The 5 beasts collided heavily with the barrier, producing a violent rumble. At the same time, everyone's attacks and the Tian-level Saint techniques landed heavily on the barrier with an aura of destruction. The violent ripples of energy shook up the void, knocking everyone into the air. They all spurted blood wildly, worsening their injuries. No one paid attention to their wounds. Instead, they all stared unblinkingly at the barrier. It shook violently, before a 10-meter-wide crack finally appeared. It began to close up slowly. Everyone's eyes lit up with joy. Without any hesitation, they climbed to their feet as fast as they could and charged recklessly at the crack. The crack was closing up slowly, and it would completely recover in a short time. Everyone grasped every moment to charge at the crack. This was their only hope for survival. Jian Chen was the least injured, so he was the fastest as well. Grabbing newbies and Xia Wang by the shoulders, he used the illusory flash. He left behind a blur and traversed several hundred meters through the crack. Afterward, the other experts elbowed their ways into the crack as well. However, there was not time for everyone to enter as the barrier healed up very quickly. It blocked the slower, heavily injured people outside, and they were consumed by the beasts in the end. Chapter 921. A piece of divine quality crystal. Boom. 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 The 5 vicious beasts did not stop after tearing the people outside to shreds. They constantly rammed the barrier, wanting to kill off all the people hiding inside. The 5 beasts were all of the 5th and 6th heavenly layer, so their attacks were extremely powerful. Every strike would make the barrier tremble violently, but it still would not be enough to break through it. Everyone finally relaxed slightly when they saw this, and their beating hearts finally calmed down. Their backs were all drenched in cold sweat. If they had been a little slower before, they would have ended up just like the people outside. Now close to a third of the 160 experts had died. The lucky survivors did not leave. Instead, they sat down inside the barrier to heal. No one was certain about the upcoming dangers, and they did not have the power to deal with anything that would happen in their current state. Jian Chen, newbies Xia Wang, and the 4 others all gathered together, recovering their energy at the same time. Every single one of them had exerted a great amount of energy in the past 3 days of beast slaughtering. They had basically survived the 3 days by depending on their medicines. Sigh. It's a pity that the incomplete items the Octoterra Emperor left behind are still with them outside. If we can't gather their space rings, it'll be impossible to complete the cultivation method, Tian-level Saint technique, and the comprehensions of cultivation left behind by the Emperor. An old man stared at the distant corpses outside the barrier regretfully. His face was filled with pity. Jian Chen glanced at the space rings outside the barrier when he heard that. A light in his eyes flickered as he hesitated over whether to get Xiao Bai to pass through the barrier and retrieve them. This barrier was cast down by a Saint Emperor all those years ago, and it still possesses a great strength. I wonder if Xiao Bai can pass through it successfully or not. Jian Chen could not make up his mind in that moment, but he gave up in the end after hesitating for a while. Elder Hongs told me before that other than the legacy of the Octoterra Emperor, there's also the Divine Hall. Only by reaching the core of the Divine Hall can I control it. I need to find a way to get there, and then take the entire place. Jian Chen's gaze became steeled as he thought of that. Several days later, some of them finally made a full recovery. They regained their healthy glow, continuing into the hall energetically. Jian Chen did not stay either, bringing in newbies and Xia Wang who were still recovering. Seeing how the trio had left, MOG and the other three hesitated slightly, as they were still in recovery. They ended up giving up on the idea of continuing to heal, standing up and following Jian Chen in. The number of people near the barrier immediately halved with the departures. However, there were still several dozen experts who remained where they were, healing silently. They did not intend on leaving before they were fully healed, because even if they came across any treasures, they would not possess the ability to fight for it. Jian Chen kept a low profile and traveled in the center of the group, while Thisnik walked at the very front. He had more Saint King's power than anyone else, as he had not run out even after the 3 days of battle with the beasts. He was currently clad in extremely tough armor that had been condensed from the energy in order to prevent any ambushes as he traveled. It was extremely quiet as they made their way. Everyone climbed the stairs, finally arriving before the main entrance of a huge hall. Then they came to a halt together. "Everyone, let's push open the hall's door together," Thisnik said to the people behind him. His gaze paused slightly when he glanced over at Jian Chen, but he moved it very quickly. Everyone nodded silently, before forming an energy barrier around them. They began to push the door together. With a screeching sound, the heavy door was slowly pushed open by everyone. It was not like the halls from the center region, where they were struck by a powerful gust of energy. It was slightly dark inside, but it was well decorated. It was filled with precious pieces of art, and thus seemed extremely extravagant. The experts all quietly observed the circumstances within the hall, before finally stepping over the high door sill after a while. They began to search quickly. "This is the furs from a Class 8 magical beast from the Tianyuan continent. It's extremely precious, but I never thought it would be used as a rug," cried out someone. He currently stared at a large, white rug with an expression of happiness, and he soon put the entire piece into his space ring. "This is rarely seen spiritual wood. It can accelerate the speed at which energy of the world gathers. But who would think that it would be made into a chair? If I cultivate while sitting on it, it should increase my speed drastically," another expert said as he pointed at the seats on the two sides of the hall. He quickly began to store them away in his space ring. Many people immediately began to fight over the chairs made completely from spiritual wood. Over 10 people immediately began to grab the seats in fear that they would not get any, and everyone ended up with 1 or 2 of them. "I grabbed this chair first. Are you trying to take it from me?" "What do you mean you grabbed it first? I obviously laid my hand on it before you." 2 people began arguing as they each grabbed an armrest of a chair. No one gave in, so they began to fight very quickly. No one paid any attention to them. They continued their search. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as his gaze landed on a huge, 10-meter-tall throne up ahead. It was completely blue in color as it shone with a hazy light. He could tell with a single glance that it was clearly extraordinary. Jian Chen could clearly feel an extremely powerful energy hidden in the throne. It was extremely pure. Although it was the same water-attributed energy as the grand quality crystal coins, it was just too pure. The difference between the two was like the disparity between a Class 5 monster core and a Class 7 monster core. "Oh my sea goddess, what did I just see? Heavens, that's unbelievable. I can actually see a divine quality crystal." A cry rang out. It was an old man that he stared unblinkingly at the throne. His excitement caused his face to become flushed bright red as greed poured from his eyes. "There's a divine quality crystal. There's actually a divine quality crystal. My God, it really is a divine quality crystal. I've never even heard of such a huge piece." More and more people noticed the throne with the hazy glow as they all cried out. Their voices were filled with shock and disbelief, which was soon replaced by greed. "It really is a piece of divine quality crystal. The throne is completely forged from divine quality crystal. This Octaterra Emperor sure is extravagant." Thisnik's eyes were also filled with greed. Divine quality crystals superseded grand quality crystal. The water-attributed energy within them was extremely pure. They could only be found by luck, and only existed in legends. Many people could live their entire life without even seeing a single one. The piece before them was so large that it possessed an inestimable value. Everyone struggled to resist the enticement of the crystal, all charging forward, wanting to take it for themselves. The person closest to the throne had already arrived at it before everyone else. Just as he extended his hand out to touch it, a trident shot out from his side, forcing him to draw his hand back. In the blink of an eye, a chaotic battle erupted in the palace. For this piece of divine quality crystal, a large battle between everyone had erupted for the first time. The violent energy rampaged in the hall, but it failed to destroy anything. Thisnik also took part in the battle. He was extremely powerful, knocking people back one after another with his two blades, arriving before the crystal very quickly. No one was his opponent. However, just as he wanted to extend his hand to put the throne into his space ring, Jian Chun, who had only been watching from afar, finally struck out. Wielding his king armament, he radiated with a towering sword chi, as if he had become a sword. He was the sword while the sword was him. Whoosh! Jian Chun left behind a blur and shot past all the others with unbelievable speed, arriving before the crystal. Shining with a dark light, the king armament stabbed toward Thisnik's arm, that approached the throne with a devastating aura. Thisnik had always secretly kept an eye out for Jian Chun's movements. To him, only the ruler of the Turtle clan could pressure him greatly. Now that he saw that Jian Chun had moved, a sliver of cold light flashed across his eyes. He pulled back his arm, before chopping as hard as he could at Jian Chun with both his blades after a battle cry. The king armament collided with Thisnik's blades, and a powerful ripple of energy immediately erupted. Their weapons seemed to be glued to one another, stuck tightly and unmoving. Only waves of powerful energy were sent out from the point where their weapons touched. They stared deeply into each other's narrowed eyes. Jian Chun remained emotionless and cool, clearly still calm. On the other hand, Thisnik was grim, and his face had become extremely dark. Sandwiched between was a vague sliver of shock. Arg! It did not remain like that for long. Thisnik violently roared out, and an even more terrifying energy surged from his body. Through the two blades in his hand, it slammed forcefully into Jian Chun's king armament. Boom! The stalemate was finally broken with a loud sound, and both of them were knocked backward by the violent energy. Jian Chun stabilized himself several meters away, and drew back his sword. He stared coldly at Thisnik. Thisnik glared back at Jian Chun in a similar fashion. However, his breath was slightly ragged, while his complexion had become quite ugly. Ruler of the Turtle clan, your strength has completely exceeded my expectations, growled Thisnik. From the single clash, he now knew that he definitely could not be Jian Chun's opponent. With a king armament, Jian Chun was as strong as a Saint King of the third heavenly layer. Even though Thisnik was also very powerful, he did not possess the power to fight a third heavenly layer Saint King. As a result, he suffered an utter defeat when he clashed with Jian Chun. At this moment, the giant crystal throne suddenly disappeared. When Jian Chun and Thisnik fought, someone had utilized the throne to mask themselves, approaching it silently from one side. They had stored the throne in their space ring, and immediately fled into the distance excitedly. Chapter 922. Treasury. At this moment, the giant crystal throne suddenly disappeared. When Jian Chun and Thisnik fought, someone had utilized the throne to mask themselves, approaching it silently from one side. They had stored the throne in their space ring, and immediately fled into the distance excitedly. A sharp killing intent flashed through Jian Chun's eyes. With the illusory flash, he became a lightning-fast blur, and caught up with the person. Jian Chun's sword suddenly stabbed out, piercing through the person's back. The person roared out as the grand power of a Saint King surged from his body. It quickly formed a suit of armor on him, while a portion of the power condensed into an 8-centimeter wide energy ball in his left hand. It radiated with terrifying power. Ruler of the Turtle clan, if you're going to keep pressuring me, I'll die with you today, the person yelled as he attempted to threaten Jian Chun with the ball of energy. However, Jian Chun completely ignored his threats. He stabbed at the armor with his king armament. Ding! The collision between the weapon and the armor led to the screeching of steel, and a powerful force blew the person away. It covered his armor with cracks, before it disintegrated with a loud sound. The person fell heavily several dozen meters away. He was stunned when he saw that his armor had completely shattered. He knew exactly how powerful the defense of the armor was, as it had been condensed from the power of a Saint King. It could even remain unscathed after resisting the attacks from several Class 7 beasts. Yet it had shattered under a single strike from Jian Chen. He was filled with disbelief. Impossible. The Turtle Clan has strong defense but weak attack. The ruler is clearly only at the peak of the 14th star. So why is he so strong? The person could not help but be astounded. But at this very moment, a blur flashed in front of him. Jian Chen had arrived and stabbed out with his king armament that radiated with dark light and an aura of destruction. You asked for it, ruler of the Turtle Clan. Determination surged on the person's face. With a swing of his hand, he tossed the condensed energy. Jian Chen adapted his form. The king armament changed directions and stabbed toward the ball of energy instead. Boom! The Saint King's power was dispersed by Jian Chen's attack, leading to an eruption of violent energy that struck Jian Chen heavily. Jian Chen flew backward uncontrollably, now slightly injured. However, it was nothing that could affect him. His gaze became icy. This was something he would only show when killing intent surged in his heart. Leaping heavily from the ground, he used the illusory flash to continue his charge at the old man. This time, the old man no longer had any power to resist Jian Chen. All he could do was watch as Jian Chen drew near. SHWT. The center of the old man's eyebrows was pierced, allowing the sword to impale his head and wipe out his soul. Jian Chen smoothly removed the old man's space ring from his hand and checked through it. Only then did he relax slightly after confirmed that the crystal was inside. Jian Chen had already made up his mind about the crystal when he first caught a glance of it. Suddenly Jian Chen's face sank. He could feel several presences locking tightly onto him. Over 10 people had already surrounded him, each staring at him viciously. Jian Chen's arm jolted, and the king armament immediately began to radiate with a dark light. Its devastating aura filled the entire room, directly pressuring the people around him. It was extremely overbearing. If you still want the crystal, come at me. Jian Chen pointed his sword at the sky as he spoke with a frigid voice. He flowed with a condescending aura, as if the people around him were nothing. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, we don't want to become your enemies, but it's such a large piece of crystal. It's a little unreasonable if you take all of it. Why don't you take it out and split it up among everyone? After all, we all found it with you. A black-robed old man said with a deep voice. He was very fearful of Jian Chen, but the enticement of the divine quality crystal was just too great. Also, there were so many people present, so he believed that if they all worked together, the ruler of the Turtle Clan would not be able to fight them all no matter how powerful he was. Jian Chen raised the space ring high up in the air with his left hand and said, "The crystal is right here. If you want it, come take it." Ruler, you are indeed very strong. That is an irrefutable truth. But are you confident enough to take on my Tian-level saint technique? Said a young man arrogantly. He was one of the people who possessed a Tian-level saint technique. Wind began to whistle as soon as the young man finished what he had to say. Jian Chen then appeared before him with lightning speed, stabbing out at the center of his eyebrows without any hesitation. The young man was astounded. He had never expected that Jian Chen would take the initiative to attack. Saint King's power immediately surged out in an attempt to block Jian Chen's sudden attack. However, Jian Chen's sword was countless times faster than before. The sword seemed to overcome the laws of space and surpass the restriction of time, stabbing out with an unbelievable speed as a streak of light. SHWT. The young man did not have the time to condense his armor at all. The king armament had stabbed through his head with dumbfounding speed, wiping out his soul. What a fast strike! Cries rang out from the surroundings. Everyone's expressions changed. They were all stunned by the speed that Jian Chen had displayed. It was just too fast. They would end up in a similar circumstance if they had been caught off guard and faced the sword instead. And this was how a peak saint ruler, who knew a Tian-level saint technique, passed away. Everyone's gazes toward Jianchen experienced a change while their fear for him skyrocketed. He was definitely a terrifying opponent. Jianchen slowly drew his king armament from the head and said coldly, "So what if you know a Tian-level saint technique? Before me, you don't even have the chance to use it." The hall fell into a silence. Everyone stared at Jianchen without saying anything at all. Thisnik stared at Jianchen from afar as his gaze flickered. A sharp sliver of killing intent was hidden in the depths of his eyes, and he thought, "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you are indeed very strong, but you will still die by my hand in the end." Jianchen slowly glanced past everyone with a sharp glare. "Since no one wants to fight for it anymore, this piece of crystal is now mine." Jianchen put the space ring away, before continuing his search around the hall. The nervous atmosphere in the hall was immediately dispelled by Jianchen's actions. Everyone gave up on the idea of fighting Jianchen for the crystal, continuing their search for other treasures in the hall. The blood drained very quickly from the two experts that had died in Jianchen's hands, sucked away by the ground without leaving a single mark. Although everyone saw this happen, no one could find any reason. As they could not think of why, even after deep thought, they tossed the matter aside and no longer paid attention to the weird phenomenon. Afterward, the people searched through the first floor of the palace for half a day. They took away many precious treasures, virtually emptying the first floor of everything it had. Only when they got everything did they move on to the first floor. The second floor also possessed many extremely valuable and rare items, which were quickly all taken away by the people. At this very moment, a loud rumble rang out from afar, combined with the rippling of a powerful energy. The commotion attracted the attention of many people, causing them all to go up and investigate in curiosity. In the end, they arrived before a huge stone door, and above the door was a single powerfully written word: "Treasury." "This must be where a large number of treasures are stored," someone cried out. He was filled with excitement. "There's no mechanism to open the stone door. Looks like our only way in is by smashing it. Let's break it together," someone suggested. Immediately, several experts began to attack the door together. Within the booms, several ninth heavenly layer saint rulers struck the door together. However, it remained unharmed without even a crack. The door has been tempered by the energy of the palace and has become extraordinarily tough. There's only the possibility of breaking through if we all strike together. What's everyone hesitating for? Everything inside must be treasures. There might even be divine quality crystals. Let's all open the door together. Several people used enticing words to motivate the entire group. They had all come here for the treasures of the Octaterra Divine Hall, so they reached an agreement very quickly. They all struck out at the door, including even Jianchen and newbies. With a deafening sound, the combined attacks from several dozen experts struck the door. However, it remained without a scratch. "Let's use our Tian-level saint techniques," someone immediately yelled out, before beginning to charge up his saint technique. Seeing how someone had already begun to charge up their Tian-level saint technique, the others all began to hesitate, but a few joined him very quickly. They began to cast their saint techniques together. The Tian-level saint techniques charged up very quickly, and they all struck out at the same time, colliding with the door with lightning speed. At the same time, the other experts did not stand around either. They struck out with their most powerful blows, cooperating with the Tian-level saint techniques to break the stone door. Boom! An even more powerful sound rang out, as the powerful force swept in all directions. It knocked everyone backward. The stone door trembled violently as clouds of dust fell from it. A tiny crack had appeared on its surface. "Let's continue our attacks. We can break the door if we do it a few more times," someone said loudly. Afterward, everyone struck the door together once again, while the number of people who had used Tian-level saint techniques increased to 18. Everyone used all they had to break down the stone door to obtain the treasure inside. Chapter 923. The Blood Demon Emperor over 59th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers struck the stone door with their full power once again. This time, several had used Tian-level saint techniques, which lead to the immediate descent of a terrifying pressure, which filled up the entire space. Boom! The attacks and saint techniques forcefully struck the stone door at virtually the same time. Violent energy ripples erupted, knocking everyone back once again. No one could retain their footing when facing such violent gusts of energy. A while later, a meter-long crack could be seen on the tough stone door after the gusts of energy had slowly dispersed in the hall. The door is too tough. If we continue like this, it'll take at least a few days before we break through it, said someone as they sighed grimly. The treasures inside must be invaluable if there's such a tough door obstructing entry. Let's do it a few times. We'll be able to break through it. Someone immediately began to encourage the others, as he did not want to give up. Let's rest for a while first before continuing. Afterward, all of them began to meditate in the surroundings to recover their energy. The people who cast the Tian-level saint techniques needed to do this in particular, as they had exerted greatly every time they cast the technique. Additionally, since they were faced with a situation where they needed to be on guard against any sudden attacks, they did not dare to cast it consecutively. They needed some time to retain their combat ability. Afterward, everyone continued their attacks at the door. Almost all of them used their most powerful attacks, fully utilizing their abilities to strike the door with Tian-level saint techniques. Meanwhile, the people who cast the saint techniques increased beyond 20. All those who could use it were participating now. The stone door constantly weakened each time it was struck by the wild flurry of attacks. It finally disintegrated after several days, revealing a long passageway. Jian Chun, newbies, and Xia Wang entered the treasury cautiously with the group. Mog and the three others followed behind. All of them maintained a certain level of vigilance. The space ahead opened up after they passed through the long passageway. They arrived in an extremely large space, which seemed very much like a storage room. Large piles of items were stacked messily inside. As everyone slowly glanced past the items, they revealed deep joy and greed in their eyes. In the very center was a mountainous pile of crystal coins. They shone with a dazzling light, and were of a great quality. They were innumerable. Among the pile of crystal coins were some fist-sized divine quality crystals that radiated with a powerful and pure water attribute energy. The surroundings were chock full of metal shelves forged from essence metal, and tables made from spiritual wood. A total of over a dozen weapons of various sizes laid on the shelves, while each and every one of them shone brightly and radiated with powerful ripples of energies. Meanwhile, the wooden tables were covered with various books, small sealed wooden boxes, and pieces of divine quality crystal. The crystals could be as small as fists or as large as heads. They all glistened charmingly, and there were lots of them. All of them, without any exceptions, focused their gazes on the large pile of coins and crystals. Their eyes were filled with greed. Perhaps they did not view the coins too importantly, but none of them could resist the temptation of the crystals. Jianchen glanced past everything. The wealth stored in here also caused his heart to beat with excitement, but his gaze was not stuck to the crystals. Instead, he stared fixedly at the various weapons on the shelves. His eyes were filled with unconcealable joy. Ruler armaments. There's actually so many ruler armaments. Jianchen screamed in his heart. To him, ruler armaments were worth much more than the divine quality crystals. If he brought them back to the Tianyuan continent and gave the weapons to the flame mercenaries, their strength would increase abruptly. Whoosh! With the sound of wind, countless people charged toward the crystals and boxes on the wooden tables uncontrollably. No one actually paid any attention to the ruler armaments. Ruler armaments were an irrefutable treasure on the Tianyuan continent, but to the sea race, they were worth far less than divine quality crystals, despite still retaining some value. As a result, all the people of the sea race focused their attention on the crystals, while no one paid any mind to the ruler armaments, or even the king armaments. Jian Chun, newbies, Xia Wang, and the four others did not show any hesitations either, all charging at the huge piles of treasures as they fought over them in a flurry. However, Jian Chun did not go for the crystals and the unknown treasures, and instead went for the metal racks. He quickly stored away all the ruler armaments before participating in the fight for the crystals. Under the rapid collection of several dozen people, all the crystals and treasures were finally cleared out. All that was left was the mountainous pile of crystal coins. All of them revealed unconcealable joy and excitement, as they all had benefited greatly. Jian Chen's harvest was extremely great as well. Not only had he obtained ruler armaments, he had also grabbed several dozen crystals, along with the wooden boxes, that stored things he did not know of. With so many divine quality crystals and high-class monster cores, my chaotic body should be able to break through to the third layer very quickly, Jian Chen thought. At the same time, he made up his mind. He would go into seclusion as soon as he got out. He planned to pour all his efforts into breaking through to the third layer. There's actually a letter from the Octaterra Emperor here, someone cried out. A person had already opened the box and inside laid a palm-sized folded piece of paper. I actually have the diary of the Samic Emperor, someone else cried out. This time it was Thisnik. He currently carried a book in his hand, while his expression was filled with astonishment and disbelief. What? The Samic Emperor's diary had actually appeared. Is it the Samic Emperor who passed on 30,000 years ago? Why would his diary end up in the hands of the Octaterra Emperor? It's said that the Samic Emperor was a legendary figure, even more ancient than the Octaterra Emperor. When it was the Samic Emperor's era, the Octaterra Emperor had not even appeared yet. Did the Octaterra Emperor obtain the Samic Emperor's things? Everyone began to discuss, as they all felt extremely surprised. Soon afterward, more and more people opened their wooden boxes. Arg! Suddenly there was a howl. An old man tossed and turned on the floor as he clutched his head in agony, while his wooden box had also fallen down. A blood-red book lay to his side, which seemed rather demonic. This sudden change to the situation attracted many people's attention. They all stared at the old man, while glancing at the book from time to time. They were all strewn between doubt and surprise. What the hell is that book? How is it that powerful? Let me see. A middle-aged, gray-robed man casually picked up the book. However, as soon as he came into contact with it, his expression changed abruptly, and he immediately tossed the book afar. He too clutched his head and howled in agony. Many people became stern when they saw this. They all stared at the book on the floor, no one daring to touch it. At this moment, the old man's pain finally lessened slightly. He stared at the blood-red book in horrification, and said with a trembling voice, "TT. That's actually the Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation manual. There's still the chi of slaughter from the Blood Demon Emperor on it. My soul has been injured by it." Many people revealed doubtful expressions when they heard the title Blood Demon Emperor. Clearly, many of them had not heard of this title. A sliver of light flashed across Thisnika's eyes as he cried out. "What did you say? The Blood Demon Emperor. Are you certain it's the Blood Demon Emperor?" Thisnika's heart began to churn. He had read about the Blood Demon Emperor's legacy from some ancient records in his clan. The Blood Demon Emperor was a supreme expert that existed 50,000 years ago. It was said that he had reached the 18th star, and was extremely terrifying. He was the strongest in the Sea Realm, much more powerful than the three Hall Masters. The Blood Demon Emperor purely cultivated slaughter. He was drenched with bloodthirstiness. He was the epicenter of a storm of blood within the Sea Realm all those years ago, ending the lives of countless 14th star Sea Soul experts, and even several 15th and 16th star Sea Soul warriors. He was named as the Demon King of Slaughter. In that age, there were people who wondered if he would even attack ordinary people, if it were not for the worry of celestial decay. This was because slaughter was what he cultivated. Only by constantly committing slaughter could he become more powerful. However, in the end, the three halls could no longer endure his actions. All three hall masters moved out together, embroiling in a grand battle in outer space with him. In the end, he fell to the hands of the three hall masters. However, the three halls had also paid a heavy price because of this. The hall masters of the Sea Goddess Hall and the Serpent God Hall were heavily injured, while the hall master of the Heaven Spirit Hall had been slain by him. The position of hall master in the Heaven Spirit Hall ended up remaining empty for 1,000 years because of that. It shocked the entire Sea Realm. As Thisnik narrated the Blood Demon Emperor's legacy, all the people present were astonished to the point that they become speechless. No one dared to touch the book anymore, but they all stared fixedly at it as their hearts beat heavily. This was the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor. If someone obtained it, they would be able to cultivate the Blood Demon Emperor's supreme method. Just how enticing was this? However, it was a pity that the residual chi of slaughter was left behind by the Blood Demon Emperor. So no one dared to take the risk and touch it. It would be extremely difficult to recover once their souls were damaged, and it was highly likely that it would leave behind eternal consequences, preventing people from breaking through for the rest of their lives. Everyone fell into a deathly silence. They all stared at the book left behind by the Blood Demon Emperor, as their hearts were filled with pity. It was so tempting before them, yet they did not have the power to obtain it. Everyone became filled with regret, but they could do nothing. Chapter 924. Emperor Armament. Are we supposed to just abandon the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor like this, and let such a rare opportunity slip by? Said a person regretfully. I dare not to touch the objects of the Blood Demon Emperor. Whoever wants it, feel free to take it. The speaker was Thisnik this time. He knew the infamy of the Blood Demon Emperor very well. Chi of slaughter from the Blood Demon Emperor still lingered on the book. Let alone him, even a few Saint Kings would not want to touch it so easily. After all, the Blood Demon Emperor was an 18th star Sea Soul warrior when he was still alive. He had only been killed when the three Hall Masters had worked together, and they had even paid a heavy price. Jianshan stared fixedly at the book as his eyes flickered. His expression fluctuated, before he finally made his way toward the book slowly after a while of hesitation. Jianshan, what are you doing? You can't touch that book. Newbies immediately stopped Jianshan and attempted to persuade him. Don't worry, I'll be fine, Jianshan said softly. His feet did not stop. Newbies hesitated slightly when he saw how determined Jianshan was, and gave in about stopping him. He followed behind Jianshan quietly. Newbies would stop him immediately if he faced any dangers. The surrounding people all immediately focused on Jianshan. They wanted to see if the extraordinary ruler of the Turtle Clan could endure the chi of slaughter within it, and obtain the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor. Jianshan arrived before it grimly, before extending his hand slowly toward the book. In that moment, everyone stared at Jianshan's hand as it rapidly approached the book on the ground. They observed unblinkingly. Finally, Jianshan's hand came into contact with the book under the gaze of several dozen experts. His body shook violently as he immediately felt an extremely powerful killing intent enter his body through his fingers. It turned into a bone-chillingly frigid energy as it made its way through his body and drew rapidly closer to his head. The killing intent was just too powerful. Before it, Jianshan felt like he was an ant facing a mountain, unable to even consider retaliation. It seemed like just the killing intent was enough to wipe out his soul. Jianshan was utterly shocked. The Blood Demon Emperor was just too powerful. Just a sliver of chi deposited in the book possessed such terrifying power. Jianshan was absolutely certain that even 5th Heavenly Layer Saint Kings could be heavily injured before the killing intent. Rumble. The killing intent traveled extremely quickly, worming into Jianshan's brain and sea of consciousness in the blink of an eye. Immediately, a violent rumble roared through Jianshan's head. In that moment, his entire sea of consciousness had been completely blanketed by a thick layer of bloody mist. The mist contained a great killing intent, as if it was about to forcefully shake his sea of consciousness into pieces. What powerful killing intent! The artifact spirit's voice rang out in Jianshan's head. The golden tower floating in his sea of consciousness suddenly became several thousand meters tall, radiating with a bright, golden light to protect Jianshan's soul. At the same time, the sword spirits that were absorbing the multicolored stone moved as well. Purple and azure lights filled up his entire sea of consciousness, as two swords appeared indistinctly, chopping at the bloody mist. As the two swords chopped down, an indescribable aura suddenly appeared. It was the traces of the omnipresent, the laws of the world. The surrounding space trembled violently and fell into chaos. Suddenly, a vast sea of stars appeared. The starry sky was filled with battle cries as countless immortals warred in this unknown region of space. Every strike from them possessed the power to destroy worlds, turning countless planets in the surroundings to dust. Following it, two humongous swords, one purple and one azure, flew out from the void. They charged at the group of immortals with devastating auras, immediately causing the space to become scattered with flesh and blood. Countless powerful immortals were felled by the swords, and their golden blood filled up the void. Every drop of blood contained terrifyingly great power, enough to kill off Saint Kings, while the corpses of immortals littered the entire space. The Saint artifact began to tremble violently. The artifact's spirit hiding within witnessed this clearly, now filled with terror. The bloody mist in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness seemed to be terrified as well, violently shrinking before retreating with speed even greater than it had come in with. It returned into the book and disappeared. Fortunately, this chi of slaughter possessed a certain level of intelligence, or we really wouldn't have been able to do anything. Master, it's best if you don't touch these objects in the future. It's very dangerous. The sword spirits' voices rang out in Jian Chen's head. Just earlier, the sword spirits did not use absolute strength to repel the chi of slaughter, but had instead displayed an image through its abilities. It formed a great deterrence, driving away the chi. This could not be used on people, and was only effective against spiritual bodies, such as the artifact spirit, and the intelligent chi of slaughter. This was because the azulite swords themselves were extremely high-level spirits. Even though they were weak now, they had a natural ability to suppress similar existences. The chi of slaughter disappeared back into the book. It had been frightened away and it was now hiding. It had developed a fear for Jian Chen. This time, Jian Chen was no longer faced with any obstructions, allowing him to examine the book normally. His expression was mixed with doubt and surprise. Jian Chen had once met the four protectors of the Bloodsword sect. He was extremely familiar with the powerful baleful Yin force present on them. Earlier, he could feel that the chi of slaughter hidden in the book seemed to be almost the same type of energy. It was just that the chi was much more powerful than the baleful Yin force, but they seemed to be of the same origin. Jian Chen was astonished by this. All the people who watched on became tongue-tied when they saw Jian Chen hold the book normally. They all stared at him in disbelief, before directing their attention to the book itself. They all revealed gazes full of greed. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, has the chi of slaughter hidden inside disappeared? Someone asked involuntarily. There can't be a lot of chi left behind by the Blood Demon Emperor. After injuring two people, it must be all gone now. The ruler of the Turtle Clan is just luck, getting the book just when all the chi of slaughter ran out, said a skinny old man. That's probably the case. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, that book was obtained by me, and the chi hidden inside was all consumed with my injured soul as the price. Can you return the book to me? Pleaded the old man who had first touched the book. Although he knew that this amounted to almost nothing, he still wanted to try as he was unwilling to accept it. Jian Chen glanced at the old man, before tossing the book onto the ground straightforwardly. He said normally, "If you want it, then take it." All the people who wanted to steal it immediately froze when they saw Jian Chen throw the cultivation method on the ground so easily. They felt like something was off. However, the old man was not able to remain so calm. He immediately ravished with joy as he saw how easily Jian Chen had returned the cultivation method to him, bending down to pick it up. Arg! However, as soon as he touched the book, he howled out in agony. His soul was injured once again by the chi of slaughter, deepening his wounds. All the people in the surroundings sucked in a breath when they saw this. They all secretly celebrated that they had not gone ahead with their plan of stealing it, as the person crying out right now would have otherwise been them instead. Jian Chen looked around coldly. Feel free to take it. Whoever wants the Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation method. I won't obstruct you. Jian Chen had nothing to fear. He had seen just how powerful the chi of slaughter was, and he knew that there was probably no one present other than himself that could overcome the chi of slaughter. Even the artifact spirit could only block the chi of slaughter, unable to fend it off. As a result, even if the people present possessed defensive treasures, they would not be able to protect themselves. Looks like the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor belongs to the ruler of the Turtle Clan. Smiled emoji who stood behind Jian Chen. A powerful sliver of envy was present in the depths of his eyes. Since no one has any interest in the cultivation method, I'll take it. Jianshan picked up the book once again. He put it away in his space ring as if nothing had happened, completely unaffected by the Qi of slaughter. The Qi of slaughter had already been frightened by the sword spirits in Jianshan's sea of consciousness, so it no longer dared to attack Jianshan again. Everyone cleared out the objects in the treasury before continuing to the next floor of the hall. As soon as they stepped on the third floor, they were hit in the face by a towering sword Qi, which caused everyone to experience a prickling pain. Even the air seemed to be contaminated by this sword Qi, becoming sharp. In the center of the hall stood a huge 30-meter-tall sword. It stood inside a dry well as it radiated with a vast pressure. There was also a vaguely condescending aura, as if the sword was the supreme ruler of the world. The sword was a straight sword that had been magnified dozens of times. Although the sword was 60 centimeters wide, it would only have a width of 2 fingers if it was a regular size. This is an emperor armament. Jianshan's eyes shone with the resplendent light. His heart began to beat uncontrollably. He had never seen an emperor armament, but he had already determined what it was the moment he caught a glance of the huge sword. Chapter 925. A chaotic battle. My God, what a big sword. Just weapon is that? How is this sword so big? I've never even heard, much less seen, such a big sword in my entire life. It's a big sword. Who's able to use it? This sword is not simple. I can actually feel a powerful sword Qi that makes my heart tremble. There was nothing else on the third floor of the hall other than the huge sword. The sword stood there like a ruler, so it naturally attracted everyone's attention. They all stared at it as they discussed with one another, everyone filled with shock. Almost all of them knew about ruler armaments, but probably only a few could recognize king armaments. However, barely anyone knew about emperor armaments as they were just too rare. Even on the Tianyuan continent, there were not many saint rulers who knew about emperor armaments, let alone the sea realm that lacked humans. Jianshan, do you think that's a legendary emperor armament? Newbies asked from beside him, as he stared at the weapon with deep shock. He had never seen an emperor armament before, but there were records of it in his inherited memories. Jianshan nodded slightly as he stared at the emperor armament with a burning gaze. The desire to take it for himself became more and more powerful in his heart. He had never experienced so much desire over a single object in his entire life. I must obtain this emperor armament, Jianshan thought as his gaze became exceptionally determined. I know what this is. It's actually an emperor armament. Suddenly Thisnik called out. His eyes were filled with disbelief, clearly recognizing it as well. Emperor armament? What emperor armament? I've never heard of anything like that. An old man beside Thisnik said in suspicion. He was curious. Thisnik sucked in a deep breath and said slowly, I've only learned of the emperor armament from my inherited memories. Emperor armaments are the weapons stored within human emperors. They're extremely powerful and possess devastating powers. When a human emperor passes away in meditation, they leave behind the weapon within them. What? Was this huge sword left behind by a human emperor? Then doesn't that mean the sword represents the death of a human emperor? My God, this is actually the weapon of a human emperor. If I can use it, then I'll have no fear even if I face up against 15th-star experts. Everyone fell into an uproar. A weapon left behind by a human emperor was enough to make all of them go green with greed. Even though members of the sea race could not use human weapons for some reason, its worth and value were beyond suspicion. Suddenly, Thisnik turned to Jianshan, and his eyes instantly narrowed. He said, Ruler of the Turtle Clan, first you took that throne completely made out of divine quality crystal, and then you obtained the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor. You've obtained far better things than us, so I hope you don't take part in the fight for the Emperor armament. Jianshan stared coldly at him when he heard that and said emotionlessly, Do you really think that the Emperor armament would be that easy to take? If you have the power, go ahead, go take it. Jianshan could not help but imagine the scene when he had obtained his king armament. King armaments were left behind by saint kings, and were much weaker than emperor armaments. However, when he had placed his hand onto it, he needed to push his chaotic body to its utmost limits in defense, or he would have been injured by the king armament. This was even more so in this case with the emperor armament. Even Jianchen was not certain that he could touch it with his current strength. Otherwise, he would be injured even with the defense of his chaotic body. Swish! At this moment, several experts shot toward the emperor armament, as they could no longer resist the temptation. A cold light flashed through Thisnika's eyes as he roared furiously, "You're looking to die!" His two blades immediately materialized in his hands, as he chased after the people with killing intent. Although Thisnik was very powerful, there were quite a few experts hidden in the group as well. Many people did not fear him. Additionally, faced with the enticement of the emperor armament, their fear for Thisnik had been completely reduced to the lowest level possible. As a result, the saint rulers who had charged at the weapon turned a deaf ear to Thisnika's words and instead sped up. Many people's hearts could not help but beat with excitement when they saw that people had already begun the seizure of the emperor armament. They could not help but participate as well. Even Xia Wang, Mog, and the three others struggled to remain calm. However, Jian Chun and newbies stood there coolly with no intentions of interfering. Nonetheless, they still stared fixedly at the weapon. Finally, a few people approached it. However, in that very moment, a formation quickly materialized on the ground and began to flicker with a dazzling red light. An invisible energy immediately filled the region, obstructing all of them from approaching the weapon. The people who had drawn close to the emperor armament almost went mad. Just when they were about to obtain it, they encountered something like this at the crucial moment. They felt like there was a great treasure right before them, but they just could not grab it no matter what they did. They were unwilling to just accept it like this. Boom, boom, boom. Violent sounds rang out in the empty hall. The people currently attacked the invisible force with all they had in spite, wanting to break through and obtain the weapon for themselves. However, they were unable to advance past the invisible force, no matter how hard they tried. It seemed to be like an extremely tough wall, keeping them out and preventing them from taking even a step closer. Thisnika's eyes also narrowed when he saw this. He subconsciously stopped as he stared at the emperor armament with a frown, before his face darkened very quickly. He growled, "I didn't think the emperor armament would be sealed up, and that the condition for breaking the seal would be so harsh. Looks like we need to pay a heavy price for the emperor armament." Jianchen slowly walked toward the weapon. As he approached it, a row of words appeared in his sight. He too darkened slightly when he scanned past the words as a cold light now flickered in his eyes. "An emperor armament is sealed here. If you want to break the seal, you need the lives of 49 experts." That was what the row of words said. The other people all gathered there, and they all saw the row of words carved on the ground. All their expressions changed, before they immediately dispersed in all directions. They became even more cautious. The atmosphere of the hall immediately became tense. At this very moment, a series of rapid footsteps rang out. At the entrance of the floor, several dozen more people had come. They were all people who had stayed at the barrier to heal, and had finally made a full recovery after the past few days. When they saw the 30-meter-long sword, they became stunned but learned about the emperor armament and the information regarding the release of its seal very quickly. They immediately became cautious, gathering in groups to observe the surroundings vigilantly. The emperor armament actually needs the lives of 49 people to be released. The Octaterra Emperor clearly wants us to kill each other. Perhaps the Octaterra Emperor is using this to pick the most powerful person out of all of us and get them to inherit the Emperor's legacy. That was what some people guessed. However, what they said immediately caused the eyes of everyone to light up, believing it to be more and more plausible. Perhaps, this really was the method that the Octaterra Emperor wanted to use to choose his successor. The legacy of the Octaterra Emperor belongs to me. I might as well use this opportunity to eliminate some people and prevent them from interfering in the future. A cold light flickered through Thisnika's eyes. He immediately chopped toward the person closest to him with his two blades. "Thisnik, what are you doing?" The person's expression changed drastically, and they immediately shot backward. At the same time, He drew his own weapon in retaliation. Thisnik was a ruler, so his strength in battle was extremely great. Although he was still a saint ruler of the 9th heavenly layer, he was no weaker than a 1st heavenly layer saint king, or maybe even one at the 2nd heavenly layer. In just a few bouts, he killed off the person he fought and wiped out his soul. With his death, the person's blood immediately disappeared into the ground. At the same time, one of the 49 inscriptions that formed the hexagram, binding the Emperor armament, broke apart. I will be taking the Emperor armament. I'll kill whoever gets in the way. Jian Chen's eyes also flashed with a cold light. He immediately drew his king armament from his space ring before charging at 5 people who stood together. Newbies naturally did not fall behind after Jian Chen had moved as he had been tempted long ago. His hands immediately became golden as he charged off in excitement. Jian Chen's sword turned into closely packed blurs, enveloping the 5 people. Even though the 5 of them fought as if their lives depended on it, they were still not Jian Chen's opponents. They came in contact with the king armament a few times, and soon became heavily injured, as they constantly backpedaled in retreat. However, before they could even stabilize themselves, the center of their eyebrows was impaled by a stroke, wiping out their souls. Jian Chen removed their space rings along the way before charging at someone else. Newbie's eyes burned with battle intent as he battled 2 people with his bare fists. His hands were laced with potent poison, while golden threads would shoot out from time to time. He heavily injured the 2 of them in the blink of an eye, before wiping out their souls by stabbing them through their foreheads with his threads. In the blink of an eye, close to 10 people had died in the hall. Their blood would disappear into the ground following their deaths, while an inscription in the hexagram would break too. The hall plunged into a chaotic battle, while the silent agreement of peace between them had already been broken. They all began to fight for different purposes, plenty because of vengeance and the hostility between clans. They all used this situation to resolve their animosity. Besides this, there was also a few people who fought to steal the treasures of others. The hall fell into chaos. People who still possessed some Saint King's power condensed their armors, while those who had run out formed barriers from their own powers, blocking a portion of the attacks. Chapter 926. The seal undone. A vast pressure suddenly appeared. Someone had begun to charge up their Tian level Saint technique, while his 3 opponents were kept busy by his companions. This created precious time for his Saint technique. The Saint technique completed its initial charge up very quickly, and rapidly locked onto the 3 people. Afterward, it directly turned the 3 people into dust as it was released with a devastating pressure, causing blood to rain. Deaths rapidly increased in the intense slaughter. Tian-level Saint techniques were cast again and again, quickly leading to the deaths of over 30 experts, together with the dispersion of their souls. There were even more people injured. The ruler of the Turtle clan and Thisnik are too powerful. They're the hardest to deal with. Let's all work together to attack them. We need to eliminate them. Immediately, many people directed their focus to Jian Chen and Thisnik. You're right. We need to eliminate them first, or the Octoterra Emperor's legacy will end up with one of them. For the legacy, we will eliminate the ruler of the Turtle clan and eliminate Thisnik. More and more people began to chant. No one was stupid. They knew that if they wanted to obtain the legacy successfully, they needed to eliminate these 2 strongest opponents. Immediately, over 40 experts charged toward Jian Chen and Thisnik as killing intent flowed from them. 4 others stayed away from the fight and charged up their Saint techniques, also targeting Jian Chen and Thisnik. You're all looking to die. MOG, you 4 go deal with those people casting Tian-level Saint techniques. Keep them busy. Newbies called out as killing intent swelled in his eyes. He spat out a mouthful of venomous gas, enveloping around a radius of 100 meters around Jian Chen. The gas was extremely corrosive, affecting everyone in the region. They all needed to devote a portion of their strength to resist the gas, so it affected the total amount of power they could use. On the other hand, Jian Chen possessed the 10,000 immunity, which was especially effective against the venom of silver-striped golden snakes. As a result, he was fine and completely unaffected despite being in the center of the region. Mog and the three others did not interfere. They were in a rather poor condition from battles earlier, so they currently gathered in a place afar as they watched everything unfold. They did not listen to newbies and go deal with the four people casting saint techniques. Jian Chen's eyes became icy as the dark light from the king armament illuminated the surroundings. With a devastating power, he finished off the three people right before him, then he turned into a blur and charged into the group. He used the illusory flash to quickly make way toward the location where the saint techniques were charging up. At the same time, Thisnik also rushed out from his encirclement, quickly shooting toward two of the four people. Tian-level saint techniques were a great threat, whether it was Jian Chen or Thisnik. They needed to prevent it as soon as possible. Two people targeted Jian Chen, while the other two targeted Thisnik. This was why the division of labor between Jian Chen and Thisnik was extremely clear-cut. They only needed to eliminate the people threatening them. The expressions of the four people changed slightly when they saw Jian Chen and Thisnik rushing at them. Saint King's power immediately surged from their bodies and condensed into a suit of armor as they shot back. They wanted to increase their distance from Jian Chen and Thisnik. You sure are sick of living if you dare to cast saint techniques at me. Thisnik had already approached his two targets, as the two blades in his hands transformed into streaks of magnificent light that chopped toward the two people. At the same time, Jian Chen had also approached his targets. His king armament turned into streaks of black light as he stabbed at the foreheads of the two people. Thisnik's blades landed on both people. One of them was knocked backward, and his saint technique was forcefully disrupted, while the other person was chopped in half. However, he did not bleed and his severed body quickly turned into stone. It's actually the stone puppet technique of the Rock Python clan, growled Thisnik. He looked forward and saw that the person he had supposedly cut in half appear in perfect shape over 1,000 meters away. The person did not stop the casting of his Tian-level saint technique either, reaching the end of the process. A vast pressure immediately descended from the sky, locking tightly onto Thisnik. On the other side, Jian Chen's king armament stabbed toward the foreheads of the other two people. His attacks were akin to those from a third heavenly layer Saint King, so they directly shattered the condensed armors. Without even giving them the time to react, he stabbed out two more times with lightning speed, piercing their foreheads and wiping out their souls. Jian Chen took their space rings from their fingers and put them away without even looking at the contents. He then looked toward the hexagram for the Emperor armament and found that 40 of the 49 inscriptions were now gone. All he needed to do was to kill another 9 people, and the seal would be released. Jian Chen did not hurry off to do just that, and instead turned to Thisnik. Now that the saint technique had been completely charged up, he wanted to see just how Thisnik was going to endure it. Jian Chen had witnessed exactly how powerful a Tian-level saint technique was from a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler long ago. It was powerful enough to even heavily injure a 2nd heavenly layer saint king, or even kill them off. Even if Thisnik survives this time, he'll be heavily injured. He won't be able to pose any threat to us anymore. We'll work together and finish him off after he gets injured. With one less powerful opponent, there'll be a great decrease in the pressure when we fight over the legacy later on. This was what many people thought. Their gazes toward Thisnik indicated that they took pleasure in his demise. Thisnik's eyes were cold as he stared emotionlessly at the Tian-level saint technique. Right now, he was no longer able to cast his own Tian-level saint technique in resistance. He sneered. Did you really think that a Tian-level saint technique can kill me? You underestimate me too much. I'll show you how I break your saint technique. Surging Saint King's power flowed from his body. It was so great that its appearance immediately filled the entire hall with a terrifying pressure. It was suffocating by its energy alone. This is a power deposited into Thisnik's body by a hall elder. Thisnik actually still hides such a powerful energy. How is that possible? Thisnik actually hides such a powerful energy. So Thisnik was always hiding his strength. This is probably his greatest trump card. Discussions broke out among the people. They all stared at Thisnik sternly. He had plenty of cards to play with thanks to the power from a hall elder. If they did not exhaust this power of his, no one could threaten him. This is at least from a ninth heavenly layer Saint King. I just wonder how much of it he has. Jianchen became uneasy as he stared at Thisnik. A great and pure power permeated Thisnik's surroundings. Using his mind, he quickly condensed a meter-wide ball of energy before him. He then shot it toward the person with the Tian-level Saint technique. At the same time, the person cast his Saint technique. A huge halberd appeared, shooting toward Thisnik with lightning speed and a destructive aura. Boom! The Saint King's power collided with the Tian-level Saint technique, immediately producing an intense boom. The violent energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, knocking both of them backward. A suit of armor had already materialized on Thisnik. He was already completely out of ordinary Saint King's power, so the armor had been condensed from the ninth heavenly layer Saint King's power. He used the armor to resist the violent ripples of energy. At the same time, he pointed out with a finger, and a streak of Saint King's power shot out and headed directly for the person who had attacked him. The other person had been knocked backward by the energy ripples and was still unable to stabilize himself. His armor was condensed from an ordinary Saint King's power and had already dulled. It was now almost completely consumed. He did not have the ability to resist the stronger power from Thisnik at all. SHWT. His forehead was impaled and the power entered his mind before erupting. It blasted his head into pieces and directly dispersed his soul. One more of the remaining 9 inscriptions disappeared from the hexagram. There was only 8 remaining now. A vicious sliver of light flashed across Thisnik's eyes. He paid no heed to the corpse's space ring and slowly turned to the group afar. His face was filled with great levels of killing intent as he called out, "Since you want to kill me, I will definitely not let you go." Thisnik turned into a flash, charging toward the group with lightning speed. He actually planned to take on so many people all by himself. However, he had the protection from the power of a ninth heavenly layer Saint King. Attacks from ordinary experts could do nothing to him. In the blink of an eye, another 8 people died in Thisnik's hands. All 8 inscriptions in the hexagram disappeared as well. Rumble! Suddenly, an extremely tremendous sword chi appeared. It bodily filled up the entire region, even causing the entire palace to shake. This sudden change disrupted Thisnik's slaughter. In that moment, everyone looked toward the origin of the sound. They all saw the Emperor armament slowly rising from the well, levitating in midair, as it radiated with a condescending aura, as if it was the supreme ruler. The seal on the Emperor armament has been released. Go take the weapon quickly, everyone called out in excitement. Ignoring any battles, they all moved as fast as they could toward the Emperor armament. Their eyes were feverish from the temptation. They knew too little about Emperor armaments, and believed that they could be obtained in the same way as ruler armaments. They thought that it would belong to whoever's hands it fell into. Chapter 927. Battle for the Emperor armament. Even though many of them had become rash due to the Emperor armament, there was still a few people who did not participate in the rush, and instead watched from afar. Jianchun newbies and Xiaowang were some of these people. Meanwhile, Mog and the other 3 were of the former, having charged over long ago. Newbies stared coldly at Mog's group as they ran toward the Emperor armament. He gently said, "The 4 of them are nothing good. We better stay vigilant." Jianchun nodded slightly but said nothing. At this very moment something happened. The Emperor armament suddenly began to glow with a blinding light, and actually began attacking despite having no one controlling it. It shot toward the people as a streak of light with unbelievable speed. 3 saint rulers failed to react, which allowed the Emperor armament to rush through them. They were split in half down the nose, and their souls were destroyed before they could even howl in agony. The Emperor armament continued onward without any decrease in force. It headed toward the walls of the hall, before colliding heavily against it. Boom! With a deafening noise, the entire hall began to tremble violently, while everyone inside almost fell over due to the loss of balance. They all finally calmed down from their rashness, staring at the Emperor armament in shock and disbelief. None of them had thought that this weapon without a user would actually fly by itself, and would actually possess such terrifying power. It could make the entire hall shake from just a collision. Boom! 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 The Emperor armament constantly slammed against the wall of the hall, causing the entire place to tremble and rumble constantly. However, it was unable to create any damage. It still possessed a great force, but it was still far from a Saint Emperor's power after all. It could shake the hall but not destroy it. It wants to escape, Jianshan muttered as he stared fixedly at the Emperor armament's actions. Perhaps the weapon has intelligence? Newbies asked in curiosity. He was filled with disbelief. I don't know, but I have heard of some rumors regarding ruler armaments. As long as experts who have reached the 9th heavenly layer, as saint rulers pass away from age, they will leave behind their saint weapon. It will contain a shred of their 3 vital energies. They hope to be revived someday in the future, Jianshan said gruffly. Newbie's eyes narrowed. Jianshan, are you saying that the reason why the Emperor armament possesses intelligence is because the Saint Emperor soul inside is acting up? The Saint Emperor is not dead? Jianshan shook his head. He crossed his hands behind him as he stared unblinkingly at the Emperor armament. I'm not sure, but the power of the Emperor armament is already beyond anything I can control, unless my strength increases. Jianshan's expression suddenly changed when he reached there. The Emperor armament was currently shooting toward where they stood with a sharp and powerful sword chi. Be careful, dodge it, Jianshan cried out. He had already become a blur, moving into the distance. Meanwhile, newbies and Xiaowang did not tarry behind either. They had always paid attention to the Emperor armament, and they dodged to both sides at the same time. Boom! The Emperor armament smashed heavily into where they stood before, and its wild energy sent all 3 of them into the air. Arg! My arm! Xiaowang howled out in pain. The Emperor armament had shot over too quickly, and his dodge had been a little slow. His entire left arm had been severed and blood sprayed like a fountain from his severed limb. The Emperor armament did not continue its attacks at the 3 of them. It immediately shot into the sky again, colliding heavily with the high roof of the hall, before turning around and shooting at the ground again. This time, it targeted the experts that stood scattered in the surroundings. Run! Each and every person paled in fright, using their various fleeing techniques in an attempt to escape from the weapon's attack range. However, the Emperor armament was just too big, so it possessed an even greater range for attack. Another expert failed to dodge in time and died to the weapon. The Emperor armament was like a headless fly, rampaging within the hall. It wanted to break through the hall and leave, so it behaved extremely rashly. However, all the people in the hall suffered from its aimless attacks, and were left in horrible conditions as they dodged. Very soon, several more people died to its blade, while more than 10 people had been injured by it too. Thisnik stared fixedly at the Emperor armament with a stern expression. Surging Saint King's power rushed out from within him once again, forming a suit of armor to cover every inch of his body. Only his eyes remained uncovered. His arms were covered particularly well. The armor was even thicker there. Thisnik leaped up and arrived near the hilt of the Emperor armament. He directly opened his arms, hugging the thick hilt tightly in an attempt to subdue the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament suddenly went quiet, before a powerful sword chi exploded from within it. The sword chi turned into a dazzling white light that enveloped Thisnik. Only a series of scratching sounds could be heard, as it immediately covered Thisnik's armor, with slashes all over. The defense of the armor was constantly eaten away. Thisnik was unwilling to accept this. With a violent roar, the Saint King's power poured out from his body unceasingly, making up for any consumption of the armor's energy. A space ring appeared in his hand. He wanted to force the Emperor armament into it. The Emperor armament immediately began to resist, refusing to enter the space ring. No matter how Thisnik tried, the Emperor armament could not be stored into the space ring. Unable to break free from Thisnik's grasp, the Emperor armament rampaged in the hall as it dragged Thisnik along. It constantly rammed against the surroundings and tremendous force jolted through Thisnik. The agony tortured him greatly. If it were not for the armor, his organs would have probably turned to dust long ago. However, even though that was the case, it did not make the process any better for Thisnik. Many experts also suffered grievous wounds. Many people fled in all directions, forced into a horrible condition by the Emperor armament. The casualties were heavy, with less than 20 people alive now. Moreover, at least half of them were injured. The consumption of Thisnica's Saint King's power was extremely severe, to the point that he could not last much longer. He released his grasp of the hilt regretfully. However, the weapon did not stop because of that. It continued to rampage in the hall, constantly slamming against the surroundings and producing deafening booms. It caused the entire hall to shake with no signs of stopping. My God, this Emperor armament has gone crazy. Newbies arrived before Jian Chun and swore as he breathed heavily while staring at the rampaging Emperor armament. The weapon had left a bone-deep wound on his back. Jian Chun stood silently as he carefully observed the Emperor armament. He opened his hand, and a golden streak of light immediately shot out from the center of his forehead, falling into his palm as a tiny golden tower. All he could do now was use the Saint artifact to subdue the Emperor armament. The sword spirits did not have the power right to confront it now. If the Emperor armament had a spirit, it naturally could be overwhelmed by the sword spirits. However, Jian Chun knew very well that this was impossible. There was an extremely high possibility that it had the soul of a Saint Emperor. At this moment, the Emperor armament turned around and shot toward Jian Chun once again. Newbies produced a weird cry. He was unwilling to hesitate at all and dodged immediately. However, Jian Chun did not choose to dodge this time. Instead, he stood there like nothing was happening, waiting for the arrival of the Emperor armament. When the Emperor armament was 10 meters away from Jian Chun, a white light suddenly appeared. Jian Chun had already notified the artifact spirit to open the main entrance of the Saint artifact. As soon as the Emperor armament struck the white light, it disappeared. It had been sucked away into the artifact space. Newbies, guard the Saint artifact well. Jian Chun sent a mental message to newbies before he entered the space as well. Within the artifact space, the long-prepared artifact spirit battled the Emperor armament midair. The artifact spirit was the absolute ruler of the artifact space, a legitimate Saint Emperor. Although the Emperor armament was very powerful, it was still a weapon in the end. As such, how could it face up against the artifact spirit? It was subdued by the artifact spirit with much effort. Currently, it was pinned down by a giant hand materialized by the artifact spirit, and was unable to break free no matter how it struggled. In the blink of an eye, the domineering Emperor armament had unknowingly entered the artifact space, falling into the hands of the artifact spirit. The artifact spirit suppressed the Emperor armament with the artifact's power, and stopped it from struggling. Afterward, he arrived before Jian Chun and said courteously, "Master, this one has suppressed the Emperor armament. However, the Emperor armament is very powerful, so it is unlikely that Master can control it with Master's current strength." Jian Chun did not mind at all. He was filled with excitement as he said, "No worries. I'll be able to use it very quickly. Once I break through to the third layer of the chaotic body, I'll have the power to use it. I just wonder how great my battle ability will become when combined with the Emperor armament after I reach the third layer." Jian Chun was filled with anticipation. At the same time, he secretly swore that he would make the chaotic body breakthrough as fast as possible once he left the Octaterra Divine Hall. "Artifact Spirit, I'll keep the Emperor armament here and leave it in your care. I will be leaving first." Jian Chun was not willing to stay in the artifact space for very long, as the dangers outside were still present. As a result, he left very soon. When he left the Saint artifact, all he saw was the experts who were fortunate enough to survive encircling newbies, and Jian Chun under Thisnica's lead. They were all hostile. Jian Chun had expected this, so he was not surprised at all when he saw this scene. He first took the Saint artifact from newbie's hands calmly, then looked toward Xia Wang. He said, "Xia Wang, don't resist. I'm taking you into the artifact space. Your missing limb can be healed there." Immediately, a milky white light rushed out from the Saint artifact and enveloped Xia Wang. Xia Wang did not resist, and was immediately taken away by the artifact's powers. The Saint artifact then became a streak of golden light, disappearing into Jian Chun's forehead. All the others, including Thisnik, became stunned when they saw this. They stared at Jian Chen's forehead in interest as their faces became filled with disbelief. They had never seen or imagined that items could be stored in someone's head. It was such a big tower as well. They all could not help but grow curious when they saw this. They wondered how such a big, golden tower could burrow into someone's forehead. What they saw had completely overthrown their prior knowledge. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, what's that little golden tower? It's so miraculous. Thisnik stared fixedly at Jian Chen as he asked curiously. A sliver of greed hid in the depths of his eyes. Thisnik, I wonder what you all intend to do. Jian Chen glared at all of them. He did not reply to Thisnik's question, and instead rebuked coldly. Thisnik was slightly angered when he heard this. He growled, Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I really want to ask you some questions. Not only did you take away the huge, invaluable divine quality crystal on the first floor, you even obtained the Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation method on the second floor. You reaped far greater benefits than all of us, and now on the third floor, you've actually shamelessly taken away the Emperor armament. Haven't you gone overboard? Thisnik's tone could not help but become hostile toward the end. For the Emperor armament, he had paid a huge price. The amount of Saint King's power wasted pained his heart. It was not the power of an ordinary Saint King, but power from an expert on par with Hall Elders. It was extremely precious. However, not only had he failed to obtain the Emperor armament after paying such a great price, it had even ended up in Jian Chen's hands. How was it possible for him to not be angry? Jian Chen's face darkened as he immediately glared at Thisnik. He said coldly, Thisnik, please speak carefully. You do not possess the ability to subdue the Emperor armament, so you can blame yourself for being too weak. You can't lay the blame on others. Are you saying that no one else can take if you can't have it? Thisnik's face darkened as he stared back at Jian Chen without fear. He gnashed his teeth. All right, it was me who didn't have the power to subdue the Emperor armament. However, ruler of the Turtle Clan, let me give you some advice. I hope you don't regret this in the future. It's impossible to enjoy some treasures so easily. Jian Chen's lips curled into a scornful smile. I never regret my actions. But Thisnik, I need to warn you as well. It's best if you don't threaten me, or do you believe that you'll become like those corpses as well, never to be able to leave the hall? Jian Chen's voice was filled with powerful killing intent. He had already made up his mind to end Thisnik's life. Thisnik's eyes narrowed as he snorted coldly. He said nothing in response, and instead turned around and left. He made his way toward the fourth floor, while his eyes were now filled with frigidness. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, let's see how everything plays out. You still don't know who's going to end up as the corpse. With Thisnik's departure, the other people all left as well. They all maintained a certain distance between each other as they made their way toward the fourth floor. Only MOG and two other people were left in the end. One of them had been slain by the Emperor armament. Ruler, Thisnik is not a simple person. You need to be careful, MOG said purposefully with a tone of concern. He acted like he was worried about Jian Chen. Jian Chen only nodded his head in response to MOG's act of concern. He did not say anything more. Calling newbies, he too continued on his way to the fourth floor. MOG and the two others looked at each other. They could naturally feel that Jian Chen's treatment of them had undergone some minute changes. The three of them hesitated slightly before following Jian Chen quietly to the fourth floor. That Thisnik sure is arrogant. If it weren't for the fact that there are fewer and fewer people now, and we still might need them for any future barriers, I, the great newbies, would have finished them off long ago, said newbies as he gnashed along the way. That Thisnik is not a simple person. I feel like he's still hiding some powerful trump cards. It's best if we are careful, warned Jian Chen. Chapter 928. 8th floor of the hall. Jian Chen and newbies continued to the 4th floor of the palace, while MOG and the other two followed closely behind them. They could sense that Jian Chen and newbies now treated them differently. MOG's group constantly attempted to explain what had happened before. They arrived on the 4th floor very quickly, but discovered that it was actually empty. Meanwhile, Thisnik's group was nowhere to be seen. There's nothing here. Let's continue to the 5th floor. Jianchen said calmly after glancing around. They then continued their way to the 5th floor, and did not meet any obstructions along the way. There were no formations or barriers at all. The hall had a total of 9 floors, yet the 5th one-way empty. Jianchen's group continued onward carefully, passing through the 6th and 7th floors, and arriving on the 8th smoothly. The 8th floor seemed empty as well. However, some regions of space here actually seemed hazy, signs of formations being triggered. Through the hazy space, they could vaguely see some trapped people. All of them were trapped within the formation space, including Thisnik. 30 meters in front, there was even the corpse of a person that died to the formations. His blood had run dry as well, sucked away by the hall. Be careful, there are formations here. Jianchen's group could not help but slow down when they saw this. They stared grimly ahead. The formations are very powerful, much more powerful than the ones we came across before. It's best that we don't separate from one another, since we might not be able to break through it by ourselves. We can work together, Jianchen said gruffly, before advancing forward cautiously. The formations in the hall were extremely profound. Although they had weakened greatly with the corrosion of time, a few high-leveled ones still possessed great power. There was only one way from the 8th floor to the 9th, and that was to pass through the countless barriers. There was no other way. Even flying would not work. Formations were hidden everywhere on the 8th floor, and could catch people off guard. After taking 10 steps, Jianchen's group suddenly became ensnared in one. At the same time, violent booms resounded. 100 meters ahead, Thisnik and the others had broken through the one that had trapped them, resulting in their appearance. As soon as Thisnik escaped, he noticed that Jianchen's group had also become ensnared. A cold sliver of killing intent immediately flashed across his eyes as he thought, "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I'll let these formations chip away at some of your strength. I will definitely not be letting you leave this place alive." The cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor, the Emperor armament from a human emperor, and that golden tower hidden in your head will all become mine. No one has the right to fight over things with me. The day of your death will arrive once I get the legacy of the Octaterra Emperor. Thisnik continued onward with the others that he had reached a tacit understanding with, falling into another formation very quickly. Although Thisnik had once been everyone's enemy, there were no eternal foes in the world, only eternal benefits. Under such circumstances, he decided to work together with the others once again, just to reach the 9th floor. There were only less than 20 people left of the 160 that had entered initially, and many of them were wounded as well. There were 3 groups in total who made their way through the 8th floor. Another one besides Jianchen and Thisnik's groups. They too had fallen into a formation, strenuously trying to break through it. As they advanced, the formations became more and more powerful. All 3 groups used everything they had to break through the formations, because they all believed that the Octaterra Emperor's legacy would be on the 9th floor, and that whoever got there first would be able to obtain it. As a result, all 3 groups devoted every moment of their time to break through the formations. They feared that they would be overtaken by the other 2 groups. 2 whole days passed. Although Jianchen's group had relatively fewer people, and came at a later time, they possessed Jianchen and newbies, 2 people who could stand on equal ground with Saint Kings. As a result, they were slightly faster than the other 2 groups, now completely caught up. Right now, the 3 groups had all arrived at the center of the 8th floor. They were still halfway from the 9th floor. The other 2 groups secretly panicked when they saw Jianchen's group catch up to the first group. They immediately sped up, both wanting to be first. The formations constantly became stronger toward the end, causing everyone to move slower and slower. At the very beginning, they only needed a single attack together, but now they all needed to put in a tremendous effort and use everything they had. Boom! Another powerful formation was broken through, revealing Jianchen's group. Jianchen had his king armament in hand. It shone brightly with a dark light, while a thick layer of chaotic force coiled around it, radiating with a devastating aura. Behind Jianchen was newbies, MOG, and the 2 others. They all seemed exhausted and greatly drained after breaking through so many formations. The formations are constantly becoming stronger. Do you still think we'll be able to break the ones at the end? Newbies said gruffly with a stern expression. Virtually all the formations they came across were ensnaring or killing formations. Ensnaring ones could be dealt with when they came across them, but they would be in danger whenever they came across powerful killing formations. Jianchen did not even look at the two other groups behind. He lowered his head and thought for some time, before continuing onward with his group. They fell into another formation after taking 10 steps. The 8th floor of the hall was basically a floor of formations. The numbers were unimaginable. No matter which direction they walked in, they would fall into one in less than 10 steps. Jianchen had considered using the White Tiger's powers to directly pass through to the 9th floor after being faced with these endless formations. However, his impressions of the Divine Hall had changed greatly after all the things he had encountered after coming in. A thought always lingered in his head, that the Octotera Divine Hall was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Perhaps there was no legacy on the 8th floor, just another unknown danger waiting for them. As a result, Jianchen gave up on the idea of using Xiaobai. Instead, he chose to use a slower method, spending energy to break through the formations like everyone else. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Everyone moved at an extremely slow rate in these 3 days. They had not even traversed a third of the remaining half. Every time Jianchen's group broke through a formation, they needed to stop there and recover their exerted power. Even newbies was no longer an exception. Only Jianchen remained energetic without any signs of weakness. Although Jianchen had already faced many battles, the chaotic force within him could support him for a very long as he did not use it like last time in the City of God. This was because each strand of chaotic force contained an extremely powerful energy, so his energy would be consumed much more slowly in comparison to ordinary people. The strength and depth of chaotic force could not be measured using ordinary forces. It was the supreme force in the world. Nothing could compare to it in the universe. The problem was that Jianchen's chaotic force right now was not the true chaotic force. The chaotic body had been divided into 18 layers by the sword spirits, and his chaotic force would transform as he reached each layer. Only when he reached the 18th layer would it become true chaotic force. Only at that time would its strength be fully displayed. The other people only used a single day to recover under the support of ordinary pills. They continued on their way, breaking through formations. Right now Thisnik was one step faster than everyone else. He took high-level pills, so he recovered his energy faster than everyone else. Time passed quickly and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Jianchen's group finally completed the remaining journey. They finally stood at the entrance of the 9th floor. They were all in horrible shapes. Their clothes were tattered while their faces were pale and haggard. They seemed like beggars, and this also applied to Jianchen. The other people besides Jianchen were wounded as well. They had walked on the edge of death several times with their lives on a thread. Thisnik and the other group emerged at the same time. They were in horrible shapes too, their tattered clothes matted with blood. Clearly, they had suffered in the formations, and there had been a decrease of people in both groups. Some had died to the formations. Ruler of the Turtle Clan. Above is where the legacy of the Octotera Emperor lies. Only one person can inherit it, but I just wonder who it will end up with in the end. Thisnik said emotionlessly to Jianchen, before glancing coldly at all the others in the surroundings. He knew that the unity between everyone was only till they reached the end successfully. As soon as they faced the legacy of the Octotera Emperor, they would all become enemies without any remorse. However, Thisnik only viewed one person importantly among all the people, and that was Jianchen. He did not care about the others. Jianchen said nothing, also glancing past everyone but this time perhaps subconsciously. To him, no one standing here was ordinary. No one could be underestimated for making it here. Although many of them were not renowned, that was because they hid purposefully. Perhaps there were other people no weaker than Thisnik among them, just not as dazzling and famed as Thisnik. This was especially applicable to the third group. Without someone like Thisnik as their leader, they had actually managed to make it here with the same speed. This made them even more complicated than they seemed. They were all of the 9th heavenly layer, but no one knew Just how many people had yet to reveal their trump cards? Chapter 929. Baleful forced. The three groups did not begin fighting. They stood at the entrance to the 9th floor at the same time, examining it before continuing onward. Each person was filled with vigilance. Not only did they have to guard against the dangers from the hall, they also needed to guard against everyone else. No one dared to be careless. They climbed the long staircase and finally arrived on the 9th floor. However, they all became dumbfounded as it was not a majestic hall like they had imagined. Instead, there were 9 dark tunnels that led off to who knows where. Everyone could not help but come to a stop. They stared at the dark tunnel with frowns, while lights flickered in their eyes. This had completely exceeded their expectations. Can we only reach the true 9th floor by passing through these tunnels? An old man from the 3rd group guessed. Jianchen grimly scanned all 9 tunnels, before fully expanding his presence. He wanted to see what was inside each one. However, Jianchen's presence suffered even greater suppressions here. He could only expand it to a radius of less than 100 meters of his sight. We've already come here. There's no path back now. It doesn't matter whether you want the legacy or you want to leave. You all need to advance past the 9th floor. Newbies, let's choose a tunnel, Jianchen said gruffly. Newbies nodded. That's all we can do now that everything's like this. Soon afterward, Jianchen casually chose a tunnel and left with newbies and the 3 other people that followed them. As Jianchen's group disappeared down a tunnel, the 2 other groups also chose their own. Their groups remained together without separating. The tunnels seemed like bottlenecks. Although their entrances were not very big, they contained something entirely different. Jianchen's group actually arrived in a huge space after passing through their tunnel. The space was circular and about a kilometer wide. 9 huge pillars stood in the surroundings. They were completely red and glowed with a demonic red light, spinning around the empty space. Boom! Suddenly, the huge stone door behind them slammed closed with a rumble. The stone door was made of the same material as the door of the treasury on the 2nd floor, so it was terrifyingly tough. Their hearts all sank, they all felt an ill omen. Suddenly, a powerful energy began to ripple. The surrounding stone pillars began to shine with dazzling streaks of light that crossed mid-air. It formed a blood-red barrier around the entire region. There was no other color except red. It made them feel like they had entered another space. This is an extremely powerful formation, and it's a killing formation, growled Newbies. He was extremely stern. His hands immediately became golden as he made preparations for battle. Jianchen also became grim. The king armament was already in his hands. He could feel the terror of this killing formation. From its influence alone, he could tell that it had far exceeded the power of any formation on the 8th floor. Suddenly they heard a wave break. In the air, a red ocean descended as if it was completely composed of blood, turning the space into a sea of blood. The liquid constantly churned, tossed, and turned. It was like the tempestuous sea. Jianchen and the others could even hear the howls of countless vengeful spirits. They formed horrendous ghostly faces, biting at the group with their bloody mouths. It was hair-raising. A faint layer of bloody mist floated slowly toward them, quickly enveloping them. The bloody mist could injure their souls. It immediately invaded their minds as soon as they drew close and caught them off guard. They immediately experienced a sharp pain in their heads, and their heads began to whirl. Their minds had become slightly clouded now. This is baleful force. Jianchen cried out. He was filled with disbelief. It was actually completely the same as the baleful force he felt from the 4 protectors of the Bloodsword sect. Jianchen had come to an understanding toward the baleful force on the Tianyuan continent. Apparently, it was a special energy formed from slaughter, and no one could use this energy other than the Bloodsword sect of the 3 great assassination organizations. Baleful force could affect the consciousness of people. There was no way to defend against it. The only choice a victim had was to endure it. It was said that if the baleful force was powerful enough, it could directly disperse the souls of its victim. It was extremely powerful. Baleful force is only cultivated by the assassins of the Bloodsword sect. Why would it be here? Jianchen constantly asked himself. He was greatly perturbed. After all, this was the Octaterra Divine Hall, the place where the Octaterra Emperor used to live. Yet there was actually baleful force in the formations here. Perhaps the Octaterra Emperor also possessed this power? Fortunately, the baleful force was not powerful enough to disperse their souls directly. At most, it would only affect them slightly and cut away some of their strength. Suddenly, the sea of blood began to churn even more violently. It slowly formed a blood-red, 100-meter-tall giant who possessed a great, imposing manner. The giant's face was unclear, but as it stood there, it seemed to be reaching from the earth to the heavens. It radiated with a great pressure as if it was God. At this moment the giant moved. He extended a finger toward Jianchen's finger. With that, the giant's arm constantly grew longer, while the finger itself expanded in size. It grew to several hundred meters in length, before shooting toward them. Jianchen's king armament radiated with a dark light as energy filled the entire space with devastating aura. Newbie's hands glowed with a dazzling goldenly light, while powerful energy constantly churned. Mog and the other two had all pulled out their weapons as well. No one held anything back, striking the huge finger together with their most powerful attacks. Boom! The attacks from the five collided with the giant's finger. Violent energy erupted, wreaking havoc in the entire space. The giant's finger paused slightly and came to a halt. Everyone flew backward without exception and became pale. Newbies and the others even vomited blood violently, now heavily injured. Meanwhile, some blood flowed from the corner of Jianchen's lips. He was heavily wounded as well. The five of them shot back by several dozen meters before colliding with the edge of the barrier. Blood immediately spurted violently from their mouths again. Jianchen climbed to his feet with a leap and stared at the blood-red giant in astoundment. He was extremely stern. The giant's strength had far exceeded what they anticipated. Jianchen was certain that it was at least at the 5th heavenly layer of Saint King, or even the 6th. It definitely was not something they could deal with. God damn it. This formation is too powerful. It actually materialized such a powerful thing. How do we fight it? Newbie stood up as he swore, immediately pulling out a large handful of Class 6 Radiant Spirit pills and wolfing them down. Mog and the other two pulled out jade bottles from their space rings. A jade green pill rolled out from their bottles at the same time, and they took it as they winced in pain. Their pills were clearly much more powerful than the Radiant Spirit pills. Their complexions immediately took a turn for the better with unbelievable speed. They were actually healing much faster than newbies. A vast pressure appeared from ahead, and the red giant began to move once again. Its finger shot toward them with a terrifying force just like before. Despair filled the eyes of Mog and the three others. The giant was just too powerful. They could not fend off a second strike right now as they were still injured. Jianchen stared fixedly at the giant finger as it rapidly drew closer. Suddenly, a golden streak of light shot from the center of his forehead, and the saint artifact appeared in his hand. He immediately opened an entry to it, and a towering sword chi radiated from within. The emperor armament which was trapped inside flew out, colliding with the finger as soon as it appeared. With a boom, the giant finger was destroyed by the emperor armament's attack. It scattered into the sea of blood. However, in the next moment, most of the blood flowed toward the giant. It fused into the giant's body. The giant's arm regrew. In that moment, its attention became focused on the emperor armament, and its giant red hand directly grabbed at it. The emperor armament raged. It radiated a powerful sword chi radiated, and chopped off the giant's hand mid-air. However, the giant was indestructible. Its missing limb immediately transformed into a pool of blood and fused with its body, allowing it to be regrown. I hope the emperor armament can destroy the blood giant. Newbies was elated. The flames of hope seemed to be ignited within him and the others. The emperor armament, however, surprised them with what it did next. It did not bother with the blood giant anymore, directly flying to the edge of the formation and chopping at the space there. It carved a huge gap before fleeing through it. The five of them were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They charged at the gap, pushing their speeds to the utmost limits. With the help of his secret techniques, newbies charged in front. He was the first one to leave, followed by Mo's trio. Jian Chen had been relatively further from the gap, so he was last. Chapter 930. Assassins of the Serpent God Hall. The five of them were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They charged at the gap, pushing their speeds to the utmost limits. With the help of his secret techniques, newbies charged in front. He was the first one to leave, followed by Mo's trio. Jian Chen had been relatively further from the gap, so he was last. The blood-red giant that had materialized in the formation space was at least as strong as a fifth heavenly layer Saint King. It was not something they could fend off. If they remained there would only be death. Yet the Emperor armament had now punched a hole through the formation. It naturally became the target where everyone fled toward, as they all knew that perhaps that was the only way they could survive. As a result, they all moved as fast as they could. Emperor armament, don't you dare run away. I've subdued you once, so I can subdue you again. Jian Chen turned into a blur, rushing toward the gap with lightning speed. Jian Chen had been forced to let out the Emperor armament. Right now, probably only the Emperor armament could fend off the blood giant. However, he had never expected the outcome to be like this. The blood giant was indeed not the Emperor armament's opponent, but the Emperor armament did not behave as Jian Chen had wished. It did not kill the blood giant. Instead, it cut through the formation and fled. Jian Chen's head was filled with thoughts of the Emperor armament. Now that it had fled, he felt extremely worried. He knew that maybe a sliver of its owner's presence existed within it, so it possessed a certain level of intelligence. After suffering from the Saint artifact before, it would definitely take precautions against it. It would definitely not be as easy this time to suck it into the artifact space. Very quickly, the trio arrived before the gap. Jian Chen was less than 10 meters behind them, but just when they were about to pass through, a cold sliver of light flashed across their eyes in unison. They suddenly all turned around, and each struck Jian Chen with a palm strike. Although the three of them were still injured, the power of their three strikes could not be ignored. They quickly surged toward Jian Chen. Right now, Jian Chen was distracted by the thoughts of the Emperor armament, and did not expect that Mog and the other two would attack him at this very moment. When he managed to react, the three attacks had already arrived before him. Jian Chen's face changed abruptly. A cold light shone in his eyes, as he barely managed to lash out with his king armament. It collided with the three attacks. With a rumble, the violent ripples of energy knocked against Jian Chen, causing him to come to a stop. Afterward, he was knocked backward uncontrollably, only coming to a halt several hundred meters away. The gap made by the Emperor armament quickly closed up. Jian Chen could clearly see the three of them standing outside and sneering back at him through the gap. Jian Chen's face darkened greatly as killing intent filled his heart. It radiated outward uncontrollably, causing the surrounding temperature to drop drastically. The gap had closed up very quickly. Jian Chen was now without a way out. Mog, I will definitely kill you all, Jian Chen said coldly. His icy voice seemed to come from a god of death, and was heard clearly by them. The gap closed completely as soon as Jian Chen finished his words, trapping him inside. The originally spacious outside area was enveloped by a blood-red cover. There was only an extremely narrow tunnel, where Mog's group and newbies currently stood. Newbies saw everything that had happened just then. His face instantly sank, while a vast killing intent poured from his body. It surged toward the sky. You actually dared to attack Jian Chen. I, the great newbies, will tear you all to shreds. Newbie's eyes became bloodshot as his golden hands immediately reached toward the trio. In that moment, Mog and the other two seemed like completely different people. They all knew just how powerful Newbies was, but they viewed his attack as nothing. Their eyes were filled with scorn. A vast power rushed from them, quickly condensing into suits of armors that protected them. Newbies' hands were unable to break through their armors. All it did was make them take a few steps back. This is a Saint King's power. Didn't you use it all up already? How do you still have more? Newbies was shocked. He immediately became stern. The three of them immediately sneered when they heard this. One of them said, Used all of it up? Hee, that's just to trick you. Newbies, the powers on the three of us may not be from Hall Elder level experts, but they're still from 16th star experts. Do you think you can break through them with just your power? Newbies replied coldly. Do you think you'll be able to obtain the Octaterra Emperor's legacy just like that? You can't forget that there's Thisnik other than Jianshen. Without Jianshen, you won't be able to win against Thisnik with just your Saint King's power. Who said we wanted the legacy? MOG stared at Newbies and jeered. Our final target is not the legacy, but to kill the three of you. If it weren't for the fact that our clans might get dragged in if we did it before so many people, we would have acted long ago. But isn't it convenient now? We can use this formation to finish off Jianshen, saving us some energy. Our remaining power will be enough to finish you off. What? You came here to kill us? Newbies was shocked as this had completely surpassed his expectations. Correct. You offended the Serpent God Hall. Did you really think you would be safe and sound hiding in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall? MOG said. So that's it. You're people of the Serpent God Hall. Newbies suddenly reached an understanding. We're not people of the Serpent God Hall, just people recruited by the Serpent God Hall. Newbies, since you know everything now, it's about time we send you off. Cold battle intent appeared in their eyes as immense Saint King's power rushed from their bodies. It was shaped into 3 sea creatures that howled furiously, charging toward Newbies. This was not their own power, but the Saint King's power deposited by a 16th star expert. Its power was tremendous. Newbies became stern, turning around to flee. Although he was confident in himself, he did not believe he could endure such tremendous attacks. A casual strike from a 16th star expert was enough to heavily injure him. If he took on 3 of them, he would only be barely alive if he did not die. Most importantly, he had no clue just how strong the expert who deposited his power into the 3 of them was. Was he of the 5th heavenly layer, or the 8th heavenly layer? Maybe even of the 9th heavenly layer? However, no matter how Newbies fled, the attacks caught up very quickly. Newbies also decided to risk everything when he saw how he could not escape. Roaring at the sky, 2 lights, 1 gold and 1 silver, emerged from within him. The lights quickly turned into densely packed scales that covered every inch of his body. Flames of 2 different colors burned on his scales, becoming more vigorous as they burnt. His scales began to bulge at an unbelievable rate. Newbies revealed an expression of pain as he roared through gritted teeth. Inherited secret technique. Explosion of gold and silver scales. This was a self-mutilating attack, blowing up the scales all over him to injure the surrounding people. Not only was this attack extremely powerful, it was laced with venom as well. However, the price to cast this secret technique was just too great. Not only would it be a big blow to his essence, he would lose all his protective scales. He would need to endure decades, or even centuries of agonizing pain, to slowly recover his essence, before shedding his skin and regrowing his scales. Newbies, I'm here. Stop. Jianshen's voice appeared in Newbies' head at that very moment. Newbies' eyes lit up, and he subconsciously stopped his secret technique. A golden light began to glow before him, and a golden tower sailed through the air. It shielded him. The golden tower was 10 meters tall and 2 meters wide. It landed heavily on the ground, causing it to tremble gently. Boom! The 3 attacks directly collided with it, but the 2 remained still. The tower had blocked the 3 attacks for Newbies, and he had emerged completely unscathed. A great tiger roar soon boomed out. With a white flash, an awe-inspiring white tiger had appeared behind the trio. The white tiger was 3 meters long and possessed wings on its back. As it stood there, a certain pressure immediately began to descend upon the surroundings. It was like the ruler of the world, and its condescending aura was even denser than a saint emperor's. A figure sat on the back of the tiger, and to no surprise, it was Jianshen. MOG's group looked at Jianshen behind them, and their eyes bulged immediately. They were overwhelmed with disbelief. Jianshen, you've escaped. How is that possible? You charged out from the formation. Did you break through it? Impossible, the gap from the Emperor armament had completely closed up. How could you have come out? All three of them exclaimed in surprise as their complexions became extremely ugly. Chapter 931. The Octoterra Emperor 1. MOG's group looked at Jianchen behind them, and their eyes bulged immediately. They were overwhelmed with disbelief. Jianchen, you've escaped. How is that possible? You charged out from the formation. Did you break through it? Impossible. The gap from the Emperor armament had completely closed up. How could you have come out? All three of them exclaimed in surprise as their complexions became extremely ugly. Jianchen sat awe-inspiringly on the white tiger's back with his king armament in hand. He stared coldly at the trio as intense killing intent poured from him without restraint. Although I knew you would do this sooner or later, I never expected you to be assassins sent by the Serpent God Hall, Jianchen said coldly. He missed none of the words the three of them had said earlier. Before in the Sea Goddess Hall, the trio had purposefully wanted to enter the Octoterra Divine Hall with Jianchen, because they had planned this long ago. Their intentions were to approach Jianchen, and then complete the mission given by Serpent God Hall. They were going to eliminate Jianchen, newbies, and Xia Wang when the perfect opportunity arose. For the three of them to eliminate Jianchen's group, the experts of the Serpent God Hall were even willing to pay a great price to fill them up with Saint King's power. They had hidden the 16th star Saint King's power very well, only revealing it in the moment before. As for the fourth person who had joined Jianchen's group, he had joined purely out of chance. However, he had already died. Although Jianchen surprised the trio greatly by breaking out of the formation, they calmed down very quickly, as they were still 9th heavenly layer Saint Kings after all. Their faces were immediately filled with killing intent as one of them sneered. Jianchen, you sure are lucky to survive even after falling into such a powerful formation. Since the formation hasn't killed you, let the three of us do the deed instead. You must die today. Tremendous Saint King's power rushed from the three of them, and immediately condensed into the shapes of sea beasts. They charged at Jianchen as they roared furiously. This time, they had clearly used more Saint King's power than before. A stupendous pressure immediately descended on Jianchen, as the three beasts shot through the air. Even Jianchen found it suffocating. Jianchen was grim. This was not the first time he faced up against the attacks from a 5th heavenly layer Saint King, so he was extremely familiar with the power they used. Additionally, he could tell from the attacks that the person who had given them the power had definitely surpassed the 5th heavenly layer. Although they were not on the level of Hall Elders, they were not far off. Jianchen did not dare to face such powerful attacks head-on. Patting the tiger's back gently with his left hand, it actually leaped into the blood-red cover to its side, as if it had received some instructions. They had entered the formation once again. The Saint King's power passed through the location where Jianchen previously stood, colliding heavily with the wall behind. Boom! The entire hall trembled slightly. Their attacks could shake the hall, so it could be inferred that these attacks were roughly just as powerful as the ownerless Emperor armament. A white figure appeared behind the trio. Jianchen had left the formation once again with the help of the white tiger, arriving soundlessly behind the three of them. Jianchen leaped off the white tiger's back without any hesitation, and rushed at MOG's group. He stabbed out 3 times with his king armament, that shone with a dark light from the chaotic force. Ding! 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 Before they could react, the 3 stabs struck the back of their heads accurately. However, they were covered in a layer of condensed armor, and their heads were not an exception to its protection. Jianchen's strike had failed to harm them. The force from the weapon caused them to stumble a few steps forward, while a tiny crack had already appeared on the back of their condensed helmets. Jianchen failed to break through the protection with a single strike, but he managed to damage it quite heavily. Jianchen did not stop. His arm jolted violently, and he continued to stab out. The king armament became a flurry of blurs, enveloping the 3 of them. With a series of closely packed sounds, Jianchen struck the 3 of them over a dozen times in an instant with his rain-like attacks. Web-like cracks appeared on their armors and quickly spread. The expressions of the trio changed. Saint King's power surged from within them immediately. They wanted to use it to face up against Jianchen again. Jianshan knew just how terrifying this power was, so he did not fight back at all. With a gesture of his hand, the 10-meter-tall saint artifact immediately flew up from behind to block the 3 attacks. Their strikes that could even shake the palace slammed into the artifact, but it did not even tremble. It resisted the attacks without the slightest effort. "I'd like to see just how much power you have left," Jianshan said coldly. Afterward, he continued his wild flurry of attacks, with the saint artifact occasionally shielding him. The power within the 3 of them quickly disappeared under their rapid consumption. They had lost their ability to contend against Jianshan without the Saint King's power, so they were felled very quickly. All of their souls were wiped out by Jianshan. With their deaths, the blood within them was quickly sucked away by the hall. They soon became shriveled corpses. Jianshan removed their space rings, while the saint artifact also shrank and flew into his hand. Jianshan arrived before the white tiger and gently petted its snow-white fur. He said, "Xiaobai, it's too dangerous here. You should return to the artifact space and work hard on powering up." In this recent period of time, the white tiger had always been consuming heavenly resources, so its strength had increased extremely quickly. It was already a Class 6 magical beast, as strong as a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. It grew at a startling speed. After all, only a few years had passed since it was born. The white tiger did not resist, returning to the artifact space after a deep growl. Jianshan arrived before newbies and asked with concern as he stared at his rather pale face, "You fine?" Newbies stared darkly at the corpses and gnashed his teeth. "I never thought they'd be assassins sent by the Serpent God Hall. Jianshan, it's fortunate that you made it on time. Otherwise the great newbies would have been skinned alive." Jianshan chuckled when he heard that. He looked around, before locking onto a door nearby. A meter-wide hole was present in it. The Emperor armament should have left through there. That should be the way to the Octaterra Emperor's legacy as well. "Let's go," said Jianshan, before making his way there with newbies. Jianshan did not let Xiaowang out. With his current strength, he was only useful when they had first entered the Divine Hall. Now that they had reached the end, the dangers were far greater than before. Not only would Xiaowang be of absolutely no help, he could even drag them down, or even end up dying. Jianshan and newbies made their way through the broken door, and arrived in a long passageway. The passageway was dark, curvy, and narrow. Jianshan and newbies walked through it cautiously and silently. The passageway then opened up, after they were several kilometers in. Before them was a beautifully decorated hall. It was extremely spacious, several hundred meters in both length and width. It was a total mess, and fragments of various ornaments were littered carelessly in the surroundings. They all showed the marks of time. A huge battle seemed to have erupted there very long ago. Jianshan looked around, before coming to a stop very quickly. 5 figures stood 100 meters in front of the pair. How did they get here so fast? Newbies also discovered them. He was astounded. These 5 were from the 2 other groups. To no surprise, Thisnik was one of them. He had actually arrived before Jianshan. The 5 of them had also discovered Jianshan, all glancing over and staring fixedly at the 2 of them. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you've come a little slow," Thisnik said emotionlessly to Jianshan. Jianshan and newbies made their way over the countless fragments to the others and said, "I thought we had come here first, but it looks like we're actually the last ones now." They stopped 20 meters away as they constantly glanced and observed each other. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I originally thought that only the 2 of us would be able to reach here, but I have miscalculated. There's not just the 2 of us. There are some friends who had always concealed their strength," Thisnik said coldly as he stared at the 4 other people. There were 2 old men, 1 old woman, and a middle-aged man. They all seemed extremely ordinary, unable to catch anyone's attention. Chapter 932. The Octaterra Emperor, 2. The middle-aged man belonged to the same group as Thisnik. He had always kept his strength well concealed, and had maintained an extremely low profile. As a result, he had not been discovered by Thisnik, even after spending so much time beside him. Thisnik glared past the other people, before staring toward the depths of the hall. His eyes burned with interest. A huge sculpture stood in the depths. It was a sculpture of a middle-aged man, and it seemed extremely lifelike, like a real person. He was filled with charm. Standing there, he seemed completely like a part of the surroundings, without any difference. Staring at the sculpture, all of them unconsciously felt as if a tremendous pressure had entered their souls. It was like they were prostrating themselves to it. Is this the Octotera Emperor? Jianchen struggled to remain calm as he stared at the sculpture. However, Jianchen soon remembered the advice from Hall Elder Hong of the Sea Goddess Hall. He then looked around as he thought. Elder Hong said that other than the legacy, this divine hall is the most valuable item present. As long as I can find the control center, I can control this divine hall. So where is it? Jianchen, why isn't the Emperor armament here? Where'd it go? Suddenly, Jianchen heard Newbie's mental message. Jianchen became slightly stunned. A sliver of light flashed across his eyes, and he looked around carefully. He actually found no traces of the Emperor armament. How is it like this? We clearly went through the door broken by the Emperor armament to get here. So why are there no traces of it? Jianchen thought. He felt uneasy. At this moment Thisnik spoke. If I've guessed correctly, the Octotera Emperor's legacy must be in that sculpture, because that's the only thing that's completely intact. But there are 7 people here, while only one person can obtain the legacy. Does anyone have any good idea to deal with this problem? Everyone's eyes immediately began to flicker in thought as they heard this. They looked around cautiously to prevent anyone from catching them off guard. No one was not enticed by the Octotera Emperor's legacy. They had all exhausted such great efforts to get here. How could they just give up so easily now? The hall immediately fell into a deathly silence. The 7 of them stood there silently as the atmosphere became suffocating. A slight killing intent gradually permeated the entire hall. Allow me to check whether the legacy is in the sculpture at all. The suffocating atmosphere was finally broken. The old woman pointed out, and some Saint King's power immediately shot out and struck the sculpture forcefully. No one stopped her. Instead, they all stared intently at the sculpture. They were unsure if the sculpture was left behind by the Octotera Emperor all those years ago, or if it contained the legacy at all. They all wanted to borrow the old woman to test the truth of the sculpture. Boom! The sculpture was more fragile than they had imagined. The power easily shattered the sculpture, causing stones to fly everywhere. Everyone became disappointed when they saw that. They no longer believed that the sculpture would contain the Octotera Emperor's legacy, seeing how easily it had been destroyed. However, an azure light was revealed in that very moment. Where the head of the shattered sculpture was, a hazy azure ball of light floated silently. Everyone immediately focused their attention on the ball of light. Thisnik even cried out involuntarily, "Is that the legacy?" Everyone's faces twitched when they heard Thisnik. Temptation burned in their eyes. Even Jianchen and newbies were not exceptions. This was the legacy of a Saint Emperor. It contained everything the Saint Emperor had learned, including his comprehension of the laws of the world. Reaching Saint Emperor would only be a matter of time for whoever obtained it. No. Suddenly, Jianchen's eyes narrowed. He stared fixedly at the light and revealed an uneasy expression. His presence was extremely powerful, far greater than Thisnik or the others. He could actually feel the rippling of a soul within the azure light. It was very weak but extremely energetic. The soul is conscious. The azure light is just a seal, preventing the soul's ripples from spreading outward and being detected. A sudden thought appeared in Jianchen's head, which caused him to pale slightly. He had suddenly reached an unbelievable conclusion after thinking back to all the weird matters that had occurred in the Octotera Divine Hall. The Octotera Emperor was still alive. With the whistling of wind, Thisnik and the 4 others shot toward the azure ball of light. They were lightning fast. Newbies did not hesitate either, but just as he wanted to join in, Jianchen suddenly extended his hand and gripped Newbie's shoulder. Through a communication technique he said, "Don't go. It's not as simple as it seems." Newbies almost had a blind faith in Jianchen after knowing him for so many years. He immediately suppressed his rashness after what Jianchen warned him. Thisnik and the 4 others arrived before the light in a flash, reaching toward it in unison. Suddenly, something happened. The azure light disappeared, replaced by a dazzling red light. Before they could react, it shot toward them with unbelievable speed, immediately disappearing into their heads. Ha 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 ha, I've long awaited this day. It won't be long till I return. Sea Goddess Hall, Serpent God Hall, Heaven Spirit Hall. I'll be wiping you all out soon after I take these bodies. A wild, savage laughter rang out in the air. Both Jian Chun and newbies became grim when they saw the sudden change in the situation. Their hearts sank in particular because of the wild laughter. Aye, is this the voice of the Octoterra Emperor? The Octoterra Emperor is not dead. Newbie's voice trembled slightly. In that moment, both of them understood. The Octoterra Divine Hall was actually all a scheme for the Emperor's revival. Jian Chen's face darkened completely as he said, I finally understand why the Divine Hall would suck away the blood from the vicious beasts. It's all a scheme of the Octoterra Emperor. He only exists as a soul right now, and it must have become extremely weak after so many years of slumber. It needs to absorb the vital essence present in the blood of the experts and beasts to heal. Newbie's complexion became extremely ugly as he said hurriedly, Jianchen, we can't stay here anymore. We need to leave. Jianchen shook his head powerlessly. The Octoterra Divine Hall is actually a trap. That whatever legacy is fake. No wonder we couldn't find any way out earlier. There's probably only a way into this Divine Hall, and no way out at all. We can't leave now. The 5 people all howled out, tossing and turning on the floor as they clutched their heads in agony. Ha ha ha, there's actually a ruler's body. I'll be taking your body. The savage voice rang out in the hall once again. With a few explosions, the heads of the 4 others blew open. Their souls had been wiped out, while the red light in their heads all gathered in Thisnika's head. The red light was the soul of someone. Octoterra Emperor. You're the Octoterra Emperor. You're actually not dead. Thisnik cried out as he resisted the agonizing pain. He had already become completely pale, feeling his soul being devoured part by the more powerful soul. Octoterra Emperor, don't you dare devour my soul. A killing intent shone in Thisnika's eyes. A terrifying energy rippled within him, filling the entire hall with a devastating aura. The hall began to tremble violently. In that moment, the entire hall seemed to be shaking gently. The tremendous power from Thisnik seemed to be able to destroy the entire place. God damn it. This is an emperor's power. You actually have an emperor's power in you. The soul cried out in terror. He was once an emperor, but he had now been reduced to a fragile soul after all. He could deal with saint rulers like Thisnik easily, but he had no power to fight back against an emperor's power. Even just a strand was enough to wipe out his soul. Immediately, the Octoterra Emperor refused to stay in Thisnika's body for even a moment longer. The soul immediately flew out, shooting toward Jianchen and newbies. The soul was extremely fast, arriving before Jianchen in the blink of an eye. Before Jianchen could even react, it had disappeared into his head. Jianchen's expression changed, and he instantly paled. His muscles constantly jerked, clearly in great pain. However, Jianchen's soul was much more powerful than Thisnika's, and other people at the same level. Although the Octoterra Emperor's entry into his head brought on agonizing pain, it was within the range he could endure. Jianchen, are you all right? Newbies cried out from beside him. However, Jianchen could not hear him at all. His consciousness was now within his sea of consciousness with the soul of the Octoterra Emperor. Jianchen currently floated mid-air in his sea of consciousness, while a young man who seemed to be in his 20s stood opposite of him. The young man wore blood-red robes while his face was filled with malevolence. Even his pupils and hair were red as if he was dyed in blood. You're not the Octoterra Emperor. Jianchen stared intently at the young man. He was extremely stern. Chapter 933. A Battle of Souls. The red-robed young man who stood before Jianchen in his sea of consciousness could not help but laugh wildly when he heard Jianchen's words. His blood-red pupils were cold, filled with viciousness and bloodlust. I'm not that weak little Octoterra. Octoterra's soul has been devoured by me long ago. Other than him, I've devoured the soul of that Samik as well. Today, you will be the third person I devour, and I'll be taking your body afterward. Do you know how great of an honor this will be to you? Brat, don't resist. Any resistance before me is useless. Just put your mind at ease and become one with me, sneered the young man. Never would I have thought that the Blood Demon Emperor, who fell tens of thousands of years, would still be alive. Moreover, he's even devoured the souls of 2 other emperors. Jian Chen's complexion was dark. He had completely grasped the young man's identity now. He was the Blood Demon Emperor, the Saint Emperor that had heavily injured the Hall Masters of the Sea Goddess Hall and the Serpent God Hall. In that exchange, he had taken the life of the Heaven Spirit Hall's Hall Master several tens of thousands of years ago. Blood Demon Emperor, you were indeed very strong, but now you're just a soul. You probably can't even handle 16th star experts in your current form. So all you can do is attempt to take the bodies of people like me. But do you really think you will succeed? Jian Chen replied coldly. At the same time, his sea of consciousness began to churn. A soul far greater than a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler appeared. This was Jian Chen's soul. Your soul is indeed very strong, but it cannot pose a threat to me. Come, don't resist. Fuse with me, the great Blood Demon Emperor. You will become me after it's done. Soon, your name will rock through the entire sea realm. You will become the strongest among the sea race, and you will be the recipient of the respect and dread of countless people. Think about just how glorious that is. As long as you fuse with me, you will be able to enjoy this supreme glory. A thin layer of baleful force filled the entire sea of consciousness, as he spoke in an attempt to affect Jian Chen's mind and thoughts in order to reach his objective. The Blood Demon Emperor had realized Jian Chen's extraordinary areas long ago. Not only was his soul much greater than 9th heavenly layer saint rulers, the Emperor could feel 2 extremely powerful energies in the sea of consciousness. He felt threatened by them, which was why he said so much to Jian Chen. Jian Chen's sea of consciousness began to tremble gently. Jian Chen was unable to defend against the baleful force. All he could do was resist it. The baleful force had already begun to affect his soul. Do you really think I'm easy to trick like a kid? You're dreaming if you want to devour my soul and take my body. I definitely will not let you do as you wish, Jian Chen rebuked mercilessly. The Blood Demon Emperor became furious as killing intent filled his eyes. He no longer had the patience to try and persuade Jian Chen. I'll give you one more chance. Are you going to let me devour your soul, or do you want to fuse with me? What's the difference? It'll all end in my death. But do you really think you have the power to devour my soul? A scornful sneer formed on Jian Chen's lips. He had fused with the sword spirits long ago. This meant that if the Blood Demon Emperor wanted to devour his soul, it was equivalent to devouring the sword spirits. The Azulite sword spirits were still weak, but they were still the sword spirits of divine swords in the past. Even when the Azulite swords broke, they did not die. So how could they be devoured by a mere Blood Demon Emperor? Jian Chen had also realized that the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was still very weak. It was not as strong as he had imagined. The only people it could probably deal with easily was other 9th heavenly layer saint rulers like Thisnik. Even if I have to suffer the outcome of greatly damaging my soul, I'll take your body since you're not cooperating. I'd like to see how you defend against Bai Qi of slaughter. He suddenly disappeared completely, turning into a bloody mist as he constantly expanded in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. Jian Chen immediately revealed an expression of agony. His sea of consciousness began to shake violently, as if there was a great earthquake. The Blood Demon Emperor's Qi of slaughter was an evolution of the baleful force. Not only did it possess the same abilities, it was much more powerful. His Qi of slaughter was devouring Jian Chen's soul bit by bit. A golden light suddenly appeared at that moment and filled Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. A completely golden tower was currently enlarging in the depths of his sea of consciousness, reaching several thousand meters tall in the blink of an eye. The tower was like an anchor, immediately stabilizing Jian Chen's sea of conscious with its appearance. The Blood Demon Emperor's Qi of slaughter was no longer able to harm Jian Chen. What is this thing? It can block my Qi of slaughter. The Blood Demon Emperor's surprised voice rang out in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. It was filled with disbelief. The golden light enveloped the entire place, resisting the damage of the Qi of slaughter for Jianchen. It then began to gather rapidly, actually forcing the Qi of slaughter into one region of the Sea of Consciousness, before it was forced into the form of a young man again. This was Jianchen's Sea of Consciousness. As the saint artifact had taken Jianchen as its master, it was able to function with much more power here than outside. The Blood Demon Emperor could do nothing against the saint artifact's powers. What is this thing? It can block my Qi of slaughter. And how has it appeared in your Sea of Consciousness? The Blood Demon Emperor cried out. Even though he was once an experienced and knowledgeable saint emperor, he had never even heard of a weird matter like the event unfolding before his eyes. Using his thoughts, a sword immediately materialized before Jianchen. It shot toward the Blood Demon Emperor's soul with lightning speed. The sword was condensed from Jianchen's soul. In his Sea of Consciousness, he was unable to use chaotic force. As a consequence, any advantages of the chaotic body was nullified as well. All he could do was battle the Blood Demon Emperor with his soul. Your soul is not weak, but it can't harm me, sneered the Blood Demon Emperor. In that moment, he had finally realized that the saint artifact could only protect Jianchen and did not possess any combat abilities. This allowed him to relax quite a lot. The sword passed through the Blood Demon Emperor's body, unable to cause any harm at all. Haha, I already said you can't harm me. My soul may not be at its peak, but it's not something a mere 14th star sea soul warrior like you can injure, sneered the Blood Demon Emperor. I beg to differ, said Jianchen. His figure quickly faded away, disappearing into the Sea of Consciousness. Blood Demon Emperor, I wonder if I can harm you if I use my full strength. Jianchen's voice rang out from everywhere. The entire region soon began to churn violently, while an even more terrifying soul formed a sword, quickly shooting toward the Blood Demon Emperor. The Blood Demon Emperor bellowed, and a strand of Qi of slaughter immediately detached itself from him to receive Jianchen's sword. However, before it could leave him, it was forced back by the saint artifact. Right now, he was ensnared by the artifact, losing virtually all power to retaliate. All he could do was watch helplessly as Jianchen's sword approached him. The sword directly passed through the Blood Demon Emperor, but it was not like before. He was no longer able to remain unscathed, immediately dulling slightly in color. You can't kill me. The Blood Demon Emperor howled upward. His body constantly shrunk, turning into an 8-centimeter tall dwarf. It allowed his soul be concentrated. He then rammed wildly against the saint artifact's power in an attempt to break free. He knew that he would not be able to cause Jianchen any harm, let alone devour his soul. If he did not break free, he would not be able to expand his soul, let alone devour Jianchen. But no matter how hard he tried, he failed. He could not even make the golden light tremble. Another sword quickly condensed in this moment, shooting toward the shrunken soul of the Blood Demon Emperor in a flash. However, the attack failed to harm him now that his soul was extremely concentrated. Unless you're a 15th star expert, you won't be able to harm me. Brat, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to devour you anymore. So why don't you let me out? Neither of us can defeat the other. Even if we continue like this, the Blood Demon Emperor finally gave in. His did indeed possess the strength that allowed him to behave arrogantly in the past, but he was no longer as great as before. Any 15th star expert would be enough to wipe him out in his current state. Blood Demon Emperor, if I've guessed correctly, your soul has only become so powerful after absorbing the vital essence in the blood from those people. If you didn't have their blood, you should still be sleeping and would dissipate without much more time. I'd like to see just how long you can last with the power you've recovered from the vital essence right now. Jianchen's voice was extremely cold as he constantly pummeled the Blood Demon Emperor with attacks. The Blood Demon Emperor's face immediately sank, as if Jianchen was spot on. So that's the case. Blood Demon Emperor, I definitely won't be letting you off since you had ill intentions toward me. I'll waste your power right now and make you dissipate completely, said Jianchen. A sliver of determination appeared in the Blood Demon Emperor's eyes. Who do you think I am? I'll make you pay a price as well for wanting to wipe me out. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.